everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Bento, and today we're going to be doing a killer perk tier list. This is for 9.5.0, most recent update with Quante Young and the Trickster rework, although we are only going to be focusing on killer perks, so it's really only up to Vecna, not Lich Vecna, Stranger Things Vecna. Oh, and sorry, I just didn't feel like doing a full face of makeup for this video, so do it. But anyway, yeah, so before I get into tier listing all of the perks here, I kind of want to go over what the standards are here. As you can see, I've done this in a spreadsheet before, so that I can reference this if needed when dragging the perks into the tier lists. So I've done a survivor perk tier list before here on my YouTube channel, but I've never done a killer perk tier list. And when I was researching for this video, I kind of just stopped and realized that survivor perks and killer perks need to be judged a little bit differently. For those of you who have seen my survivor perk tier list, you know that the judgment, where to place the perk on the tier list, is based on not how consistent the value is, but how good the value is. A lot of the time it has to do with efficiency, and the more efficient the perk, the higher on the tier list it is, or the more game-changing its effect is, because a lot of survivor perks just don't have any impact on the outcome of the game. They're just not strong enough to, and so that's why survivor perks were judged like that. But with killer perks, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, the effect itself in a vacuum is good. Of course, again, there are exceptions to this, perks that have just overall weak effects, but for the majority of killer perks, the effect is at least decent on its own. But the activation can be a little bit weird, or the value you get as the player can be a little bit weak. So that's how we're going to be judging this. The S tier for killer perks is going to be consistent value with a strong effect. So these are the perks that you will consistently get value out of every single game, and you'll also, the effect itself is also very strong. The A tier is going to be consistent value with a good effect. So these are the perks that you're going to get value out of nearly every game, if not every game. But the effect, while not extremely strong, is still good nonetheless. B tier, it's going to be either mediocre value or a mediocre effect. So this could be a perk where you will get value out of it every game, but the effect just isn't that great. Or it can be a perk that you will probably not get too much value out of, even if the effect is good. So keep that in mind. C tier is going to be niche value, and these are the perks that are only good on a few specific killers, or are only good in very certain builds. Not necessarily that the perk is bad, but a good example of this is Thanatophobia. Not a terrible perk, but it is niche, because the only killers that are really going to be getting good value out of Thanatophobia are Legion and Plague. So that would be considered a niche value perk. Not necessarily bad, but that's what the C tier is for. And the D tier is going to be the perks that either have inconsistent value, meaning you just aren't going to get value out of them very frequently, or the effect is weak, because there are definitely a few killer perks where the effect is weak, even if it is less common than weak survivor perks. So yeah, that's kind of how we're doing this. So just keep in mind that, a lot of this is my opinion, but obviously there is standards here to the tiers. So if you're asking yourself, oh, why is this perk higher, or why is this perk lower, just remember how I define the tiers, right? It's not just about the effect or just about the value. It's a little bit of both. Sometimes it's one or the other for certain tiers, but yeah. So just keep that in mind. All right, well, we can get started here. And we'll go in order, and we will start with Nurse's Calling. This is a perk that used to be very meta back in the day. It's gotten less meta over time, but basically what it does is it reveals the auras of healing survivors to you as the killer within a certain range. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the A tier. I know that seems a little bit high, but once again, consistent value, good effect. Not a super strong effect, but a good effect. Yeah, it's solid. A lot of killers will use this perk better than others, like Stranger Things Vecna or Pyramid Head. Killers like that tend to do very well with it for some reason. But yeah, not necessarily niche, still good on the majority of the roster. Next we have Agitation. This is a trapper perk. It basically just makes you move faster while you carry survivors to hooks. 18% faster, I believe. We're gonna put this in the A tier as well. I mean, again, consistent value, good effect. This is especially good if you combine it with Scourge Hook perks, or if you're playing like Basement Trapper or Basement Hag. You know, it definitely shines in certain builds more, but even on its own, it's still very solid. All right, next we have Alien Instinct, and I will be referencing the wiki for some of these just so you guys know. I don't know exactly what every perk does, so referencing that for, like, you know, perks that I may not be totally sure about. Alien Instinct, it reveals the aura of the furthest injured survivor for 5 seconds, and that survivor suffers from Oblivious for 20 seconds when you hook another survivor. This is a Xenomorph perk. This I have in the B tier. Again, probably seems a little bit high to some of you, but I would say that this is, you know, a mediocre value kind of perk. The effect is also kind of mediocre. I'd say everything about this is just mediocre. So B tier it is. All right, next we have All Shaking Thunder. This perk basically is a Houndmaster perk. It gives you a little bit of extra lunge with a cooldown for some reason after you fall from a great height. So already this is extremely map dependent. It's just like, it's like a map dependent version of coup de grace. Why would you ever use this when coup de grace exists? Especially because map offerings like basically don't work now. There's really no reason to bring this as long as coup de grace exists. So it's going in the C tier. Again, niche value, very map dependent. So I mean, if you're on like, I don't know, a map with a lot of great heights, the game, maybe. That one doesn't have a whole lot of great heights, but it's got some. Maps with 2-floor main buildings, like Ormond or something, like, I don't know. Yeah, it's not completely useless, but it is very niche. All right, next we have Awaken Awareness, same thing, C tier. It's a Wesker perk. It reveals the auras of survivors who are nearby you while you are carrying a survivor to a hook. So, I mean, it's good for one thing, and that is backpack builds. I mean, that's really it. It's not totally weak, or the effect is fine. It's just, again, very niche. It's good in one kind of build, and that's it. You will never see this perk on its own. So, and we have arrived at our first S tier, Bamboozle. This is a clown perk that basically just lets you block windows one at a time if you vault them. This is especially good on killers with vault powers like Wesker or Chucky or Krasu, killers like that. But it is solid on virtually every single killer. There are very few killers where you see Bamboozle and you're like, that doesn't work for them. I would say like ranged killers, maybe like Huntress, Springtrap, Slinger. Like those killers don't really need Bamboozle because their powers kind of reward them for like letting a survivor vault a window. But even then, you could run them on those killers and it wouldn't be a bad choice. Bamboozle is a solid perk all around. I've heard people say it is the best in the game. I don't know if I agree with that necessarily, but it is very solid. And I just want to clarify before I continue, since I did forget to say this in the beginning, I am not ordering these perks within the tiers. I did the same thing for my survivor perk tier list. I'm just putting them in the tiers. So like, I'm not saying Awakened Awareness is worse than All Shaking Thunder or Agitation is worse than Nurse's Calling. It's just they're all in the same tier. There's no order within the tiers. All right, next we have Barbecue and Chili. This is also going to be in the S tier. Consistent value, very strong effect. This is a Bubba perk that just reveals the auras of survivors that are far away from you after you hook a survivor. It really helps, especially high mobility killers, get into their next chase very quickly, and that is so important. That is the best form of slowdown in any game when you're playing as killer is quick downs. So the faster you can get into chase, the faster you can get it down, and the faster and the slower you can make the game go for the survivors. So Barbecue, wonderful perk. Yeah, it's nothing, no notes here. Great perk. All right, next we have Batteries Included. And I have Batteries Included in the B tier. Yeah, B tier. I think that's fair. The effect is very mediocre of this. value is going to be mediocre too, because, I mean, to be fair, I will say, at really high levels of play, this perk could be meta, because the correct way to play as a high-level survivor is to take the killer and your chases towards complete generators, so that, they're in an area of the map that they don't want to be in, where they can't simultaneously be chasing you and also pressuring generators. So batteries included is good if you're playing against, like, again, this is the mindset of like a competitive survivor, There are a lot of perks on both sides, but namely that we'll be covering today on the killer side, that don't sound that good, or like to the average player are considered like bad or like not meta. But like batteries included, I don't play comp, but I wouldn't be surprised to learn that it is meta in comp, at least to some degree, because again, you're playing against survivors who are always taking chase towards completed generators. So I don't know. It's just a thought, but yeah, I mean, nonetheless, in a standard public game against standard solo queue survivors, it's a B tier perk. I considered putting it in C, since it really only shines in like full haste builds, but I wouldn't say it's quite niche enough to be C tier. All right, now we have our first D tier perk, which is Beast of Prey. Yes, Beast of Prey. This is a Huntress perk that it gives you undetectable while undetectable while you have bloodlust, I think. Or like when you get bloodlust, you get undetectable for like a certain amount of time after that. I don't know. I'm not even gonna bother checking the wiki to tell you what it does, because it's that bad. This perk is so bad and so forgotten that the developers, when they went through and nerfed all of the blood point bonuses that were still on perks in the game, this was like almost a year ago, I think, if not longer, they forgot about Beast of Prey. They removed the blood point bonuses from every single perk on the roster on both sides except this one. They forgot about Beast of Prey. Of course, they went back and fixed it, but that's how forgotten this perk is. It's just, this definitely falls into the small category of killer perks with just a bad effect, like a straight up bad or weak effect. Steer clear of this one. All right, Bitter Murmur. This is gonna go in the A tier. Yeah, consistent value, good effect. You will get value out of this every single time a generator pops. And, assuming survivors don't have distortion, but that's far less picked now than it was, like even a year and a half ago. So you will pretty much always get value out of this, and the effect is good, especially once the last generator pops and you see everybody's aura. This is especially good on killers like Huntress. I see a lot of Huntresses using this still. It definitely used to be a little bit better when the aura perk selection was a little bit smaller, but even still, I would say this is an A tier perk. It's solid. All right, next we have Blood Echo, and this is going to be in the C tier. What this does, when you hook a survivor, all other injured survivors suffer from the exhausted and hemorrhage status effects for 30 seconds. So, I mean, it's, niche. Yeah, the only killers I ever see using this perk are Legion and Plague. Because a lot of the time, I mean, yeah, survivors aren't staying injured as much as they used to, with the litany of self-heal perks in the game now, and the fact that syringes and styptics have been nerfed. Survivors are more inclined to use their med kits for like actual self-heals, rather than just like popping a syringe or a styptic. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just not like, you're not going to get value out of this very frequently on any killer other than Legion or Plague. Of course, if you are playing those killers, not terrible, but, niche. All right, next we have Blood Warden. This is going to be in the C tier, and I know, if you're a Survivor main, you're probably like, what? That's so much better than that. You have to remember, I am judging these perks, just like the Survivor perks, I am judging the killer perks based on the value they can obtain alone. I don't think a good perk on either side needs to lean on other perks to be good, right? I think Blood Warden is a niche perk. It is good for full endgame builds, and that is about it. Because, I mean, even though it's started to become a little bit less frequent with Survivors 99 and Gates, they still do it a lot of the time. And they should. You know, playing around this perk is like one of the first things you learn how to do as a survivor player. And that's true because it, in the right situation or with a full endgame build, it can absolutely turn the game around. But on its own, I would say the value you're going to get from it is pretty niche at best. All right, next we have Bloodhound. This is going to be in the D tier. Bloodhound is a Wraith perk, and literally all it does is make pools of blood a little bit brighter. That is all that it does. This is bad. This is a weak effect. You do not need pools of blood to be any brighter. This is the kind of perk that is stuck in 2016 when maps and grass and fog and everything on the maps were darker and denser. I could almost see the value of this perk. Or if you have color blindness or something, maybe it's okay for that, but then just use the colorblind settings to change the red stuff to like blue or whatever. Like at that point, you don't need this perk. This perk is a waste of a slot. The effect is bad. Just don't touch this perk. It's terrible. Sorry. All right. Next we have Brutal Strength. This is gonna go in the A tier, I think. Yes. All right. Perfect. And Brutal Strength is a trapper perk. It just allows you to kick pallets and generators and breakable walls a little bit faster. This is a really good, like, QOL perk to really just enhance the experience of a lot of M1 killers. If you like to play M1 killers, Brutal Strength is a great pick, especially for certain ones like Onryo. It just, yeah, I mean, I have nothing bad to say about this perk. It is a good effect. It is consistent in terms of value. You will always get value out of it. Yeah, it is a good perk all around. Yeah, nothing else to say about that. All right, next we have Call of Brine, which we are going to put in the B tier. Call of Brine, it activates for 60 seconds after you kick a generator, and it regresses at 125% of the normal speed, and it's highlighted to you in yellow. You'll receive a loud noise notification each time a survivor hits a good skill check on the affected generator. I'm not sure if this part of the perk still happens, because I know this might be a little bit out of date, as you can see right here from when they nerfed it after the gen kick meta. So I'm not totally sure if this still happens. I don't ever use Call of Brine, so I don't know. Ask somebody who does, but I know this is still the case, the 125% regression. So, I mean, is 125% regression good? Yes, but it's not great. It's it's mediocre compared to a lot of other regression options. Not only that, but it can only be active on one generator at a time. And so I feel like the value you're going to feel out of this perk, you know, as the killer player, will you notice that Call of Brine is helping you? Probably not, compared to something like Pop or Eruption, which are also gen kick perks that are a little bit stronger than Call of Brine. All right, next we have Corrupt Intervention. This is a plague perk that blocks the 3 furthest generators from you when you spawn in for 2 minutes. This will end prematurely if you down a survivor, so keep that in mind. But this is a fantastic perk. In my opinion, Corrupt Intervention is the best killer perk in the game. Up there with Lethal Pursuer, but I would say Corrupt is maybe a teeny bit better. The reason this is so strong, especially with the new spawn logic, is it forces survivors towards you at the start of the game. It forces them towards you, and it forces them into a smaller cluster of generators to work on than if, you know, they had just spawned in and spread out on their own. They're more inclined to like see that you have corrupt and be like, oh, whatever, let's just double or triple this, which gives you free pressure if you find them. This perk is especially good on killers that require setup, like Trapper, Hag, even Plague a little bit. But overall, even on killers that don't require any setup, this is a great pick. If you are ever unsure of like, what should I run in my 4th slot, and you don't have Lethal Pursuer, run Corrupt. You don't need both on most killers, but Corrupt is a good go-to. Great perk. Again, in my opinion, probably the best in the game for killers. All right, next we have Colorophobia. This is going to go in the B tier. I was thinking about putting this in C tier since it is a little bit niche. It's especially strong in like full anti-heal builds. But even then, on its own, it's pretty solid. It slows the healing speed by 50% on its own, and then also increases the speed of the skill checks. Even for a veteran player like myself, this can throw me off a little bit. Of course, I know what the perk does, so I'm knowing to expect it when I see it pop up as a debuff. But like, especially non-veteran players, you know, that 40% faster skill check cursor can be really tough. Again, of course, especially if you combine it with other perks, which again makes it a little bit niche, but on its own, it's still pretty solid. I mean, slowing the healing speed by 50% on its own is, you know, good. And that is true for any heals that occur within your terror radius. So this is especially good, of course, on killers like Wesker or Ghoul or Hillbilly, any killer with like a 40-meter terror radius, but still, you know, pretty mediocre, but not terrible. All right, next we have Coup de Grace, and this is going to be in the A tier. Oop, there we go. And basically what Coup de Grace does is it increases the lunge distance of like your you know, your basic lunge. That increases by 80% for each token that you have. And when you use a lunge, you spend a token. So like it doesn't stack. It's not like 80%, and then if you have 5 tokens, it's 400%. Like, no, it's not like that, but it's 80% for each token, and you get 2 tokens every time a generator gets completed. So this perk gets stronger as the game goes on. Well, it doesn't really get stronger, but you get to keep using it as the game goes on. So very consistent value. This is a good effect. This is especially good on any killer who relies a little bit more on their basic attack. But even then, it can still be good on like killers like Wesker. I enjoy Coup de Grace on Wesker, so yeah, I mean, it's not M1 killer only, but it is still a good QOL perk if you're, you know, looking for a chase perk to help you out. All right, next we have Cruel Limits, and I'm going to put this in the B tier. I know that seems a little bit high. A lot of people don't like this perk. I personally think it's pretty underrated. Again, you know, the value is consistent with this perk because it activates after every time a generator is completed, but the effect is a little bit mediocre, especially because it is kind of map dependent. If you have Cruel Limits and you're playing on the game, you will never notice this perk. Like, there are like 3 windows on the game. Like, you will never ever notice this perk on a map like that. But on a super window heavy map like Larry's, it can change the game, you know what I mean? So that's why I have it as kind of like mediocre value, or excuse me, mediocre effect, because it is pretty map dependent, but the value is consistent. And I mean, it's solid. Yeah, I mean, it's not great, it's not terrible, it just kind of is. So yeah. All right, next we have Dark Arrogance, and I'm going to put this, sorry, in the C tier, which makes sense. I mean, it is a pretty niche perk. So what this perk does, it's a Lich perk, and it makes it exchanges for you a longer stun time in exchange for a faster vault speed. So it is like a worse superior anatomy or bamboozle in that sense. But it is especially good when stacked with those perks. If you stack like Dark Arrogance, Bamboozle, and Superior Anatomy, you're going to be vaulting like extremely fast. And if you're using a power vault like Wesker or Chucky, you're probably going to be vaulting almost as fast as the survivors are. So this is like, you know, this is the definition of a niche perk, you know. It is really only good on certain killers in certain builds. And outside of that, I would never recommend you use this perk on your own. If you're looking for a vault-related perk for killers, just one, do not choose Dark Arrogance. But yeah. All right, next we have Dark Devotion, and this is going to go in the C tier as well. This is the kind of perk that I feel like you're really only going to get value out of in full undetectable builds, maybe. On its own, it's very niche. It just, all it does is transfer your terror radius to the obsession when you injure them. So it kind of almost like, if you want to get consistent value out of it, you have to like focus the obsession, which is kind of unhealthy design. And a lot of the time, especially in, with DS being one of the most picked perks, the obsession has decisive strike, like, or will to live, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, it's a little bit niche in my opinion. If you run a full build for undetectable, it can have its place there, but it's just on its own. Yeah, don't bring this perk. It's kind of a waste. All right, next we have Darkness Revealed. I'm gonna put this in the C tier as well. This perk, again, the definition of a niche perk. This perk is good in full aura builds on Huntress and Trickster. That is, like, literally it. What this perk does is it makes it so that when you search a locker, any survivors within, I want to say, like 8 meters of any locker on the map gets revealed to you. I use this perk on Huntress, and that's it. That is all that it's good for, is information. And the only reason to use this on Huntress is because you're going to be reloading at lockers anyway. You should never be using this perk on virtually any other killer. It's just, yeah, very niche value, definition of a niche perk. All right, next we have Dead Man Switch, and this is going to go in the S tier. Dead Man Switch is a Deathslinger perk that makes it so that every time you hook a survivor, this perk activates, and then the next survivor to let go of a generator will block it for 35 seconds. So this is obviously, of course, especially good with, like, Pain Resonance, but even on its own, super solid perk. It's good for information. It's good for killers with map pressure, like Artist, or even, like, a killer that can very quickly teleport to a generator with a lot of progress, like Dredge, So, I mean, but even then, even on killers without any map pressure or any mobility whatsoever, this is a solid slowdown perk. It is, consistent value, very strong effect. You guys know the drill. Next, we have Deadlock. This is also going to be in the S tier. This is, yeah, yet another perk with a consistent value, strong effect situation. You will get value out of this perk every single game, okay? Whether you win or lose, because, well, I guess the only time where you wouldn't get value out of this perk is if the survivors complete 0 generators and you kill them all before they can complete a single gen. But yeah, so this perk basically just blocks gens for, I want to say 20 seconds, maybe 25. I'm not sure. It's either 20 or 25 seconds. It blocks the most progressed generator after one completes. So this is especially good on killers that, kind of like need that time, in between gen pops, and it really helps from seeing that situation where, you're chasing a survivor, you down them, you hook them, and pop, pop, pop. That will never happen if you have Deadlock. So, yeah, consistent value, strong effect, great perk. Next, we have Deathbound. This is going to go in the B tier, and I will need to reference this for Deathbound. All right. When a survivor finishes healing another for the equivalent of 1 health state, Deathbound activates, causes the healer to scream and reveal their location, and causes the healer to suffer from the oblivious status effect whenever they are further than 8 meters from the other survivor. And then Deathbound deactivates after the healer loses a health state. So this is a little bit convoluted, and it's the kind of killer perk, it's not necessarily awful, but it is the kind of killer perk that you don't feel the value of directly as the killer player. And a lot of those perks are unappealing to killer players because there are so many perks where you can feel the value. So something like this is a little bit less picked for that reason. But it is mediocre. It's not bad, okay? It is a mediocre effect. The value that you will see out of this is mediocre. I mean, maybe if anything, it might be a little bit more on the consistent value side because survivors are always going to be healing each other. So yeah, I mean, it's more of like a semi-consistent value with a mediocre effect. That makes it B tier, so. All right, next we have Deerstalker, and I've got this in the A tier. So Deerstalker recently got reworked, and what it does is it makes it so that it's like Object of Obsession, but for killers. Basically, it reveals the aura of the survivor with the least total amount of chase time to you, like every 30 seconds or so. It might be more than that, it might be a little less. But this is a good effect. This is consistent value, good effect. You will always get value out of this because there will always be a least chase survivor. You will always get to see their aura. And yeah, it encourages healthy play styles, you know, not tunneling, whatever. It's, yeah, it is a solid perk. Consistent value, good effect. Yeah, nothing more to say about this one. Next we have Discordance. This is going to go in the B tier. I'm going to reference this here. So any generator within a range of 128 meters that's being repaired by 2 or more survivors is marked by a yellow aura. And when the generator is first highlighted, Discordance triggers a loud noise notification. And then after the generator is no longer within range or is being repaired by just 1 survivor, the highlighted aura will linger for another 4 seconds. So it's an info perk. It's not a slowdown perk, but it is a generator info perk. Now, these definitely have their place, especially because it rewards you when the survivors misplay. Generally speaking, survivors should rarely, if ever, be like doubling up or tripling up on gens. And so this will tell you if they are, and it will allow you to really punish that mistake. That being said, it's still kind of a mediocre value situation. As you get into lobbies with better and better survivors, they're going to know to split up on generators and such. And you will be seeing less and less value from this perk as that happens. So just keep that in mind. This is, again, though, not terrible. It can be good on killers with map pressure. But yeah, just kind of average. All right, next we have Dissolution, and this is going to go in the C tier. On its own, this perk is just not, it's nothing to write home about. It's not really a bad effect, but the value is pretty niche. The fact is that this perk gets revealed to survivors whenever you have it. As soon as you injure them, it pops up for them as a debuff. You have Dissolution, and if they know what it does, they're not gonna, you know, like, me and my friends always make a joke about this, like, because I like to use Dissolution on one killer. It's just, a lot of survivors see Dissolution and take it as a suggestion, but the good ones don't. They will see it and they will know, okay, I can't vault this pallet, unless they have like Lithe or something, but they'll know, okay, I can't vault this pallet, or else it's just gonna break for free and I'll just get hit, or I'll just go down for free, whatever. So, the reason this isn't a D tier perk though is because it is very good on one killer and good on some others. It's very good on Krazu, and it is okay on, I don't want to say okay, it's good on like Clown or any other killer that can force 50/50s. So yeah, I mean, it's not totally awful, but it is niche. All right, next we have Distressing, and this is gonna go in the D tier. On its own, just not a good perk. All it does is increase your terror radius by like 20% or something. I don't know. I like to run this in one build, and it's a full anti-heal build on Oni, and it's mostly just there to boost Colorophobia. So yeah, that's all it does. On its own, it's just a weak effect. Yeah. Next we have Dominance. And I'm pretty sure I know what this does, but I'm going to read it anyway. The first time each chest and totem are interacted with by a survivor, Dominance triggers its effect. It calls upon the entity to block it for 16 seconds, and the aura of the blocked prop is revealed to you in white. So, yeah, this is going to go in the D tier. This is good for one thing, and it's not even good for this. It's okay for one thing and one thing only, and that is a full hex build. And even then, you could just dedicate that 4th perk slot to another hex, or like Pentimento if you don't have that, or Undying as, a form of protection for your other hexes. Like, this is the worst kind of hex protection in the entire game. It doesn't even permanently block the totem. Not that it should, but it kicks them off for, 12 seconds, and then they can just get back on it. Like, so yeah, I mean, and again, we're judging these perks on their own. Good perks don't need other perks to be considered good. The only way this is even decent is in a full hex build. So on its own, it's literally just useless. This is a weak effect. This is inconsistent value and a weak effect. Just, don't go anywhere near this perk. Next we have Dragon's Grip. and that is going to be in the C tier. I know what this does, but I want to read it anyway. So when you kick a gen, it activates for the next 30 seconds on that generator. The first survivor to interact with that generator will scream and reveal their location for 4 seconds and suffer from the exposed status effect for 60 seconds. But it then has a cooldown of 40 seconds. So this is pretty niche. Even in full gen kick builds, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this. There's like one situation in which this is like pretty strong. And it's a full gen kick build on Wraith, and what you do is you kick the gen when you know the survivor's still nearby, and then you stand still next to it. Because if you stand still for I think like 3 seconds with Wraith, you'll just completely disappear. You won't even have an outline. Or you can pair it with Insidious to do this on any killer that isn't necessarily a stealth killer. That is the only thing the Dragon's Grip is good for. And yeah, so that makes it niche. It's not on its own. And on, like, obviously it's, you know, useless on some killers, like Nurse can never use this, for instance. But yeah, it's very niche. Next we have Dying Light, and this is going to go in the D tier. I will read this because I don't think I can explain it very well. Okay, so every time you hook a survivor that's not your obsession, you gain a token. And for as long as the obsession is alive, all other survivors suffer from a stackable 3% token action speed penalty to repairing, healing, and sabotaging up to 33% for 11 tokens. But the obsession is unaffected by this, and they're granted a 33% action speed bonus to unhooking and healing. So the most you can slow down you can get out of this is 33% for every survivor, and that's if you hook everybody else, like kill everybody else, 11 tokens, right? And the obsession still has a 33% bonus to unhooking and healing. This is just, yeah. I mean, I would say it's niche because the only thing this is good for is combining it with Thanatophobia on Plague or Legion. But even then, I don't think it's worth the trade-off of buffing the obsession. It's just, there are so many better slowdown perks that you can bring to slow down the game in other aspects, whether it's, you know, through generators or whatever. And this like actively is a detriment to you. Like, you have to buff one of the survivors to nerf the other ones. And even then, the nerf is still something you have to earn, whereas the obsession's buff does not. So like, if you only have 2 tokens on this perk, they're only going to be repairing and healing and sabotaging and whatever, like, what is it? 3% per token, right? Yeah, 3% per token. So they would be doing that stuff 6% slower, while the obsession is doing it 33% faster. Like, it's not worth the trade-off. The only time it even becomes even is if you've killed everybody else. So it's just, yeah, to me, this perk is just not good at all. All right, next we have Enduring, and this is going to go in the A tier. And I am only judging these perks by their you know, strength on their own. So I'm not judging Enduring based on its, you know, amazing synergy with Spirit Fury here. However, what I will say is that even though this perk is A tier on its own, you should never ever use it without Spirit Fury. It's just, it's still good on its own, but not good enough to justify like a perk slot. The reason it's an A on its own is because it is consistent in terms of value, assuming the survivors stun you, which most survivors, you know, are trying to do that. It's good because the survivors will probably be stunning you, the value's consistent, and the effect is good. You know, a 50% reduced stun time is a good effect. So yeah, by definition, it's A tier on its own, but I still would never recommend you using this on its own without Spirit Fury. You know, save for old Krazu. Release Krazu, Enduring on its own was worth it, but now I would say don't ever bring this on its own. Not because it's bad, but because it's so good with Spirit Fury, you're missing out if you don't. All right, next we have Eruption, and this is going to go in the A tier. Eruption is a Nemesis perk, and here, I'll actually just read it, because, yeah. Basically, you kick a gen. It's like Surge, but for gen kicks, without a range limit, basically. I don't know how else to explain it. I'm not gonna bother reading it because it's kind of long and convoluted, and I don't know if it's accurate or up to date. But yeah, basically, Eruption is Surge, but without a range limit, and it has the requirement of you kicking the gen first. I like to use this on Wraith because you'll be kicking gens a lot with a killer like Wraith. It's also good on like Onryo. But I would say that overall we are kind of moving away, and we have been for a couple of years now, moving away from gen kick meta, as far as like slowdown perks go, and more into like gen blocking. With that said, though, it's still a good perk. It is still consistent value, assuming you kick gens, with a good effect. So, yeah. Not a super strong effect, but a good effect. Next, we have Fire Up, and this is also going to go in the A tier. Here, I will read this one. Each time a generator is completed, Fire Up grows in power and gains 1 token up to a maximum of 5. Each token applies a stackable buff, or 4% per token, up to a maximum of 20% to the following action speeds: picking up and dropping survivors, breaking breakable walls, pallets, and damaging generators, and vaulting windows. So, yeah, this basically just rewards you as the game goes on, and it's definitely not bad. I mean, by the time you have all 5 tokens here, you are vaulting, breaking pallets, and picking up survivors 20% faster. That is a good effect, you know? It's consistent, it's good. Yeah. Next we have Forced Hesitation, and this is going to be in the C tier. Forced Hesitation makes it so that when you down a survivor, any other nearby survivors are hit with like a 20% hindered penalty, so they cannot run away from you. This is, again, the definition of a niche perk. This is good on Eerie Flesh and Bubba. Like, that's literally it. Or if you have a bunch of survivors crowding you with like flashlights or flashbangs, or for a pallet save, it can make it so that they don't get there for that. But other than that, it's just, this perk is extremely niche. All right, next we have Forced Penance, and this is going to go in the C tier. Now, here's the thing about Forced Penance. We discussed this a little bit earlier with, which perk was it? Batteries included. Forced Penance is actually, and I know this for a fact, it is meta in comp. And that is because the effect, it makes you broken for 80 seconds or 60 seconds, something like that. It's a while. Every time you take a protection hit. And that's obviously going to be really good in comp because the survivors are coordinated, they're taking hits for each other. But in the average public game, which is a solo queue game, like just looking at the statistics, the average game of Dead by Daylight is a solo queue game. Survivors just aren't going to be all over each other taking protection hits. You will see very, very little value out of it. And so I was going to put it in D tier because of that, because the effect isn't bad, but it is extremely inconsistent in terms of value in the average public game. I decided I'd bump it up to C since it is meta in comp, but bringing this in public games would be a mistake, so just keep that in mind, you know? Yeah. All right, next we have Forever Entwined. This is going to go in the A tier. This perk is very similar to Fire Up, but it only applies to picking up and hooking speeds. I don't think, there's no description on it here on the wiki. It never got updated after Kaneki got added, but basically all you need to know is it's like Fire Up with tokens, except you get tokens every time you injure or down a survivor. And you can get up to, like, I think 8 tokens, and you, by the end, are hooking and picking up survivors very fast. Consistent value, good effect, saves you time when it comes to hooking and stuff, so yeah, it's good. Next we have Franklin's Demise, and Oh How the Mighty Have Fallen. I would definitely consider this a D tier perk now. I don't know how many people would agree with me on that, but now that it doesn't deplete item charges, I would say this effect is pretty weak. All it does is make survivors drop their items now. And yeah, there's no charge depletion or anything. So if a survivor drops their item, Yeah, like this is just extremely weak on its own. I mean, I think you can still combine it with Weave Attunement for some decent, maybe mediocre value, but both perks on their own are just next to useless. I mean, yeah, just no reason to bring Franklin's anymore. And next we have Friends Till the End. This is going to go in the S tier. Friends Till the End is a Chucky perk, and it makes it so that every time you hook a survivor who's not the obsession will get their aura revealed and they'll be exposed for 20 seconds. The aura reveal is 10, the exposed is 20. And if you hook the obsession, it will transfer to a new survivor who will scream and reveal their location to you. So it's a solid information perk. It's like an alternative to barbecue for M1 killers or killers that lack a little bit of mobility. Then again, it can be good on killers that do have mobility and are M1, like Dredge. Dredge does really well with this perk. Or even like Unknown could do pretty well with this, but you definitely don't need to be bringing both barbecue and Friends Till the End. That's a little bit overkill. Both are good choices. Friends is a little bit more geared towards weaker killers, which is totally fine, but overall, you can't go wrong with this perk on most of the roster. The only killer who really can't get much value out of it is going to be like Nurse, because she can't take advantage of exposed. But even then, I've seen nurses use this just for the aura. So yeah, I mean it's a solid perk, very consistent value, strong effect. Yeah. Next we have Furtive Chase, and this is gonna go in the C tier. And before you guys are like, wait, what about Friends Till the End Furtive? The Friends Till the End Furtive combo is very good. But again, we are judging these perks exclusively based on the amount of value or the strength of the perk that it has alone. A good perk does not need to lean on other perks to be good, okay? It has to be good on its own, and Furtive Chase is not, okay? So what it does is it makes it so that when you hook the obsession, you get 10% haste and 10 seconds of undetectable. Then when somebody else unhooks that obsession, the obsession status transfers to them. So yeah, I mean it's niche. That's why I don't have it in D tier or B tier. Is it's niche. It's good for full obsession builds, it's good for full haste builds, it can be good in full undetectable builds, and it's especially good when combined with Friends Till the End. But on its own, this perk is just underwhelming, so keep that in mind. Next we have Game of Foot, and that is going to go in the C tier as well. Game of Foot is kind of the same deal as Furtive Chase. Basically, here, let's just read Game of Foot. It's a little bit convoluted. When you hit the survivor with the highest cumulative chase time with a basic attack, they become the obsession. While you're chasing your obsession, Game of Foot activates its secondary effect, and it grants a 5% haste status effect for 10 seconds after damaging a gen, breaking a breakable wall, or a pallet. So, again, super convoluted. And the only time I ever see this perk, and rightfully so, is in full obsession builds. That is the only time this perk is any good. So yeah. Niche perk. It is good for full obsession builds, and that is it. Next we have Gearhead, and this is going to go in C as well. Basically what this does is after you injure a survivor, it activates for, I want to say 30 seconds, and while it's active, it reveals the auras of survivors who hit good skill checks on generators. This is good for one thing and one thing only, and that is Orbital Huntress. Okay, there is no other reason to use this perk, because if you've injured a survivor to get the perk active, you should be sticking on that survivor, unless you're playing Orbital Huntress and injuring people from across the map. And hence, it's like Gearhead is like a self-fulfilling perk kind of there, it allows you to continue to injure people from across the map, to continue getting value out of the perk that reveals survivors to you from across the map. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, Gearhead is good for that one thing, and that is it. Next we have Genetic Limits, and this is going to go in the A tier. This is a really solid perk, especially for certain killers. But yeah, I mean, like Spirit, for instance, does so well with this perk because it hard counters Iron Will. What this perk does is it makes you exhausted when you get hit by a killer. Basically, when you get injured, you become exhausted. So Iron Will is hard countered by this. Dead Hard is hard countered by this. Overcome is hard countered by this. There are 3 exhaustion perks, 2 of which are in the meta that are just hard countered by genetic limits. I don't know why people don't use this perk more, and it's probably because, you know, I don't know. I actually don't know. Probably because people want to just stack for a slowdown. But yeah, this perk is extremely underrated. If you are having problems with survivors using exhaustion perks and your biggest complaints are like Dead Hard or Iron Will, genetic limits is the way to go. There's one other anti-exhaustion perk that we'll cover later that is better for dealing with Sprint Burst and Lithe, but genetic limits really, again, it absolutely hard counters Dead Hard, Iron Will, and Overcome. So yeah, consistent value, strong effect, or not strong effect, good effect. Yeah, good perk. All right, next we've got Grim Embrace. And this is going to go in the S tier. Grim Embrace works after you've hooked each survivor for the first time. And what it does was when you hook each survivor for the first time, it blocks all generators on the map for 10 seconds, except for the last survivor. So if you've hooked these 3 survivors, you know, once already each, and then you hook the 4th survivor for the first time, it will block all generators for 40 seconds. And it has the secondary effect of revealing the aura of the obsession to you for 6 seconds. So yeah, this perk is great. It is very consistent in terms of value, assuming you're good enough to spread your hooks. And it's a strong effect. This is a great perk. And of course it has that secondary effect too, which I actually didn't even know about till like last year. But yeah, like a perk this good doesn't even need that secondary effect. But anyway. All right, next we have Haywire. And this is going to go in the C tier. Once again, the definition of a niche perk. This is a spring trap perk that makes it so that exit gates regress. That is what they do. I think they regress until like the halfway point. And then, yeah, it makes it so that you can't 99 the gates, basically. So this is good for one reason and one reason only, and that is in a full endgame build when you also have Blood Warden, to essentially force Blood Warden value. Because if survivors, you know, 99 the gates to make sure that you don't have Blood Warden, this perk will force them to not do that. So yeah, I mean, people were asking for this perk for a really long time. Like before Springtrap came out, it was like, when are we going to get a perk that, you know, makes it so the exit gates regress or blah, 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 because they were getting tired of Survivors 99 gates, and now nobody uses it. Not even in full endgame builds, because the other endgame perks are just like better. So yeah, I don't know. This perk was like begged for years, and now nobody uses it. So I don't know. But yeah, niche perk. Next we have Help Wanted, and this is going to go in the B tier. Basically this is Stabiffle, but with machine learning activation. So when you kick a generator, it becomes compromised, and when that generator gets completed, you get a 25% reduction to your basic attack cooldown for the next like 60 seconds. Consistent value, since it activates after every time a generator gets finished, assuming you've kicked that generator. But it is a kind of mediocre effect on its own. A 25% cooldown to the reduction, a 25% reduction to the cooldown of your basic attack is kind of nothing on its own. When combined with Stabiffle, this can be really good, but on its own, it's just mediocre. All right, so now we are getting into the hex perks, and I knew we were gonna get to this point eventually, and here's what I'll say. We have to judge the hex perks a little bit differently than standard perks, because hex perks have the whole risk-reward factor of if it gets cleansed, it does nothing, but if it's left up, it can be game-changing. So this is how I've judged the hex perks. I have judged the hex perks based on their value and how consistent it is or strong the effect is if it's left up, okay? So if you see a hex perk in the A tier and you're like, well, that value is not consistent because it might get cleansed in the first, I understand what you're saying, but I am judging the strength of these perks based on if they stay up for the majority of the game. Um, or in the case of ones like Noed, if they get left up for, most of the end game. So, yeah, we have to judge hex perks a little bit differently because of the way they work. So that's how we're going to do it, okay? So, that being said, none of the hex perks will make the S tier. Even if it's a, very strong effect like Blood Favor or Devour Hope, because of that risk that it might get cleansed in the, first 2 seconds of the game, we can't really put them in S tier. It's not that consistent or that strong for that reason. We have to have kind of like a blend, so we're acknowledging the fact that they might get cleansed, but also trying to focus on the value of the perk if they don't. So that's what we're doing with the hex perks here. Just keep that in mind when we are tier listing them. And we will start with the first one, which is Blood Favor, and that is going to go in the A tier. Blood Favor is a blight perk that makes it so that when you injure a survivor, every pallet within a 32-meter radius gets blocked for like 12 seconds or 16 seconds, something like that. This is really good on a lot of killers. As far as hex perks go, it's definitely one of the best. If you're running a full hex build, you can't go wrong with this one. Yeah, there are very few hexes that I would recommend running over this one. Again, it shines a little bit more on certain killers, but in general, this is very good. Next, we have Crowd Control, and that is going to go in the B tier. Crowd Control basically makes it so that you vault a little bit faster, and it also makes it so that the last few windows that survivors have fast vaulted get blocked by the entity. It'll get reset. Like, let's say, I think it's 5, last 5 vaults, maybe it's 6, but I think it's 5. So if they vault a 6th window that isn't blocked, then the oldest one will get unblocked and transferred to that one. But yeah. So, I mean, it's mediocre value, especially on maps with a lot of windows. It's a little bit map dependent for that reason. This is a lot less effective on Larry's compared to the game. So, yeah. Next, we have Devour Hope, and this is going to go in A tier as well. This is probably the single best hex perk, again, assuming it's left up. I could see the argument for Ruin being the best hex perk, but I would probably give it to Devour Hope. Basically, what this does is it works on a token system, and you get a token every time a survivor gets unhooked if you are further than 24 meters from the hook, I think. I'm not sure, but you have to be kind of far away from the hook. You can't camp. And anytime a survivor gets unhooked with this perk up, you will get a token. And when you get 3 tokens, all survivors become exposed. And when you get 5 tokens, you can mori them, regardless of how many hook stages they have. So yeah, this is a very strong hex. If you're running a full hex build, definitely include Devour. It's the kind of hex that once it pops up, survivors have to stop what they're doing and start looking for it. Otherwise, the game, will end with you moriing each and every one of them. So yeah, really good perk. Next, we have Face the Darkness, and this is going to go in the C tier. This is kind of convoluted, so I'll read it out. Whenever you injure a survivor by any means, if there is still a dull totem remaining on the map, Face the Darkness activates and lights it, cursing that survivor, causing all other survivors to scream every 25 seconds if they are outside the terror radius, revealing their auras for 2 seconds each time. This deactivates once the cursed survivor either enters the dying state or is fully healed, which extinguishes the totem. So, yeah. Super convoluted. This is one of those hex perks that you should never ever run on its own. It is niche, and it is niche in the sense that it is good on a full hex build with Pig and Thrill of the Hunt. That is the only time I would ever recommend giving up one of your perk slots for this hex if you're running a full hex build. Definitely don't run this on its own. Only run it in a full hex build, and if you're playing the Irremovable Traps Uncleansable Totem Hex Pig build. That's literally the only time to bring this. All right. Next we have Haunted Ground, and this is going to go in the B tier. This is a trap hex, and it was the first of its kind. It is a hex that actually punishes the survivors for cleansing it. Basically what it does is it lights 2 totems, and if a survivor cleanses either of those totems, then everybody will become exposed for 60 seconds. So, I mean, not a bad effect at all. Especially because the majority of survivors are of the opinion if it glows, it goes. And they should be. This is one of 3 trap hexes in the entire game. So yeah, I mean, if you're, you know, yeah, I mean, you should cleanse a totem if you see it, but this punishes survivors for doing that. So it's mediocre in terms of its value, because there will still be survivors that won't cleanse it, especially if they don't notice that you have any other hexes. Like if they notice, like, oh, they don't have Ruin, they don't have Devour Hope, they don't have Blood Favor, this might be Haunted Ground. They might not cleanse it, you know, and they might just not stumble across it if it's, you know, not something, if you're not running like a full hex build or something. So yeah, pretty mediocre in terms of value, but not a bad effect. Next we have Hex Hive Mind, and this is going to go into the, oh yeah, it's at the bottom here, A. We're going to put that in the A tier. Hex Hive Mind is a new hex perk from Stranger Things Vecna, and it basically operates like Springtrap's Bonnie's Guitar String add-on, or Wraith's All-Seeing Eyes, is that what it's called? All-Seeing Eyes, I think, add-on, or Legion's Entity Touch Mixtape or whatever, those add-ons. It's basically like that. And what it does is it reveals the auras of generators based on their progress. So like the redder a generator is that you see with this perk, the more progress it has. And it deactivates after when there's 1 gen left. So yeah, I mean, it's really good information. This is, again, for a new perk, it's, you know, definitely one of the stronger hexes. Great information, no notes, good perk. Next we have Hex Huntress Lullaby. This is gonna go in the D tier. Maybe I'm underestimating this perk a little bit, and you guys can tell me if I am. Because I'm deaf, I will never, ever be affected by this perk on the survivor side. Every single time I see this perk in play, I'm just like, oh, okay. It's like Iron Will when I'm playing Killer. Like, this cannot affect me. I don't hear skill check warning sounds anyway, so I genuinely don't care if you have this perk. Again, maybe I'm underestimating it a little bit because I play the game on Huntress Lullaby mode every time I play Survivor. And again, you can tell me if I am, but to me, this seems like a pretty weak effect. Yeah, it just seems weak to me. Next, we have Noed, also known as Hex No One Escapes Death. We're going to put this in the A tier. This is consistently one of the strongest hexes in the game. What it does is it activates when all of the generators are completed, and it makes all survivors exposed until they cleanse it. Obviously, this is good on killers that can really take advantage of the exposed, mainly M1 killers. It's also, you know, good in full endgame builds, but it's one of the only endgame perks that I could consistently recommend. There's one other, but we'll get to that later. It's one of the only endgame perks I could consistently recommend. You could run this alone, you know? Like, you don't need any other endgame perks to make this worth running. This is a solid perk on its own. You don't need other hexes, you don't need other endgame perks. It is just a good perk on its own. Yeah, Noed is very solid. Next we have Hex Nothing But Misery. It's gonna go in the C tier. This is a Kaneki perk, and basically it makes it so that when survivors run away from dropped pallets, or is it, no, maybe I'm thinking of Knockout. I know this one doesn't have a description on, I don't think it does. Yeah, it doesn't have a description. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't really know what this does. I know it has something to do with, it hinders the survivors. It makes them move slower. It's either after they drop a pallet or if they move a certain distance away from the dropped pallet. I can't remember, if I'm being totally honest. So yeah, I did look it up when I made that spreadsheet, if it makes you feel better. So I did know what it did like a week ago, and I don't know now. So yeah, I can guarantee it's C tier though. I can guarantee it's a niche perk. All right, next we have Hex Overture of Doom, which we are going to be putting in the B tier. I don't think this one has a description either. I don't even think it's on here. Yeah, it's not. Krazu and Vecna's perks are missing on here. I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember what this one does either. I did know what it did when I made this, but I don't know now. We'll just skip over it. I don't see anyone using this anyway, so it's not like you really need to know what it does. If you really want to know, you can look it up. So yeah, I'm sorry guys. Next we have Hex Pentimento. Okay, so I do have it in D tier. Hear me out, okay? I love Hex Pentimento, and in most of my Hex builds, mainly on my P100 Plague, I use this perk every single time. It is a really good effect, but the value is inconsistent because we have to judge these perks based on their strength alone. In a full Hex build, this is an A tier perk. Judging it on its own, when you may not have any other hexes and you're just relying on survivors to cleanse dulls, the value is inconsistent, and therefore it is a D tier perk by definition. But once again, if you're running a full Hex build, this is an A tier perk easily. So if that's what you want to know, yes, Pentimento is definitely A tier in a full Hex build. On its own, it is a D tier perk. Next, we have Hex Plaything, and we are going to put that... Where did I put it? There it is. Plaything / Fortune's Fool. It is also called Hex Fortune's Fool for anybody who didn't get Pinhead. We're going to put that in the A tier. Plaything is super consistent, you know. It basically, it gives each individual survivor their own totem every time you hook them for the first time, and it makes them oblivious until they cleanse it. This is really solid, even if the effect is a little bit mediocre, the strength of this perk comes from its synergy with Pentimento. Again, effect is mediocre, but the value is consistent enough to be A tier. But again, it really shines with Pentimento, and it gives you those 4 totems for sure that survivors either have to leave or cleanse and give you Pentimento value. So yeah, it's a good perk. The effect maybe a little bit better than mediocre. I'd say like low end of good. But yeah, low end of good with very consistent value. So all right, next we have Hex Retribution, which we are going to put in the B tier. This is another trap hex, much like Haunted Ground. Basically what it does is it makes it so that when you start cleansing a totem, you get oblivious for like 60 seconds, I think. And when the totem gets cleansed, everybody's auras get revealed for like 12 seconds, maybe 15, I'm not sure, something like that. And that's all it does. It's good in a full Hex build so that you consistently get information, assuming Retribution's not the first one that gets cleansed. You consistently get information about where the survivors are every time they do one of your totems, but on its own, the value is kind of mediocre because, you know, if it's on its own, it's the only Hex totem on the map, and survivors have to find it, and then they have to be willing to cleanse it, knowing that you don't have Ruin or Devour Hope or Blood Favor or whatever, so yeah. This is a trap hex, kind of like Haunted Ground. It has the same problems, but the same benefits as well. And next we have Hex Ruin. This is going to go in the A tier. This, between Devour Hope and Ruin, these are the 2 strongest hexes for sure. Basically what Ruin does is it regresses generators at 100% of the normal regression speed. Maybe it's more than that now. I don't know if this is up to date. This is 2 years old. Yeah, it might be 125 or 150 now. I'm not totally sure, but I know that it's, you know, a very good perk. This is honestly, even on its own, a pretty strong perk. You should probably bring Undying to protect it if you are going to bring Ruin. But you don't even need a full Hex build for this perk to be good. It's just good on its own. So yeah, consistent value, good effect. Next we have Hex the Third Seal, and this is going to go in the A tier as well, because you have to remember, these perks are being judged based on their strength against the average team. The average team is a solo queue team, you know? I mean, like, well over half, probably even well over 3/4 of all DVD games played are solo queue. Well, actually, 90%, I can say this, 90% of all games played have at least one solo queue player in them, because the Swift rate is about 10%. So 90% of all games have at least one solo queue player in them, and that is why this perk is A tier, in terms of hexes at least. What it does is it makes it so that every time the killer hits a survivor, the last 4 survivors hit get the blindness status effect until this perk is cleansed, or until somebody else takes that oldest spot of, you know, four most recent hits, sorry. Yeah. So yeah, against the average team, which is a solo queue team, or at least has one solo queue person on it, this is a very good hex. Next we have Thrill of the Hunt. And this is going to go in the B tier. So yeah, this is another, well, I guess it's not technically a trap hex on its own. Well, no, yeah, I guess it's not technically a trap hex if you run it with other hexes, but on its own, and that's how we're judging these perks, it is a trap hex because it doesn't really do anything on its own. All it does is slow down the speed at which survivors cleanse totems significantly. So this is really good to run in full hex builds, but again, on its own, it virtually does nothing. Of course, it slows down itself, but again, if it's the only hex perk you're running, this is assuming the survivors will find the totem, and then assuming that they'll spend, you know, 40 plus seconds cleansing it, knowing it's your only hex. So yeah, on its own, it's mediocre value, but in a full hex build, it definitely has its place. Next, we have Hex 2 can play, and this is going in the D tier. This is probably the single worst hex in the entire game. This makes it so that anytime a survivor stuns or blinds you, they also get stunned or blinded for like 2 seconds. This is just really bad. This is just a weak effect. Even ignoring the fact that it's a hex perk, and the value is slightly inconsistent because of that, it's just a bad effect. Like, I've never once been disoriented by this perk when playing Survivor, and I've never used it when playing Killer, so. Alright, next we have Hex Undying, and this is going to go in the D tier as well, because, again, we have to judge these perks based on the value they provide on their own. This perk is essentially a protection plan for your hex. This is the protection plan you bring if you only have one other hex, say Ruin or Devour Hope or something. It's also not too bad with Haunted Ground, because if a survivor cleanses the totem, it'll automatically shift onto Undying, but it'll give you the effect of Haunted Ground, so you can get 2 uses out of Haunted Ground. But anyway, so yeah, this is a hex protection plan. Basically makes it so that no matter which hex you cleanse first, or no matter which hex the survivors cleanse first, Undying will always take the fall. So if they cleanse your Devour Hope, no they didn't, Devour stays alive, Undying gets cleansed instead. If they cleansed your Ruin or your Blood Favor, nope, Undying gets cleansed instead. It'll take the fall no matter which hex you cleanse first. So yeah, it's a solid protection plan, and it also has the secondary effect of revealing the auras of survivors within 4 meters of a dull totem. So, I mean, yeah, it's, like, again, judged on its own, that's an extremely weak effect, and it does next to nothing. So, yeah, not a horrible perk by any means, but, yeah, it's like Pentimento, right? This is what I'll say. On its own, it's a D tier perk, but when combined with a hex that needs protecting, like Ruin or Devour, it can be probably like a maybe high B, low A tier. So just keep that in mind. Next we have Hex Wretched Fate. That's a D tier as well. Not for the same reason. It's not like Pentimento or Undying. It's just a bad effect. So, or it's more of an inconsistent value situation. But here, I'll read it for you guys. When a generator is completed, Wretched Fate activates and lights a random dual totem cursing the obsession. It reduces their repair speed by 33%, which is a lot. But the aura of the hex is revealed to them within 12 meters. So as soon as they realize this perk is in play, everybody else can keep repairing generators while the obsession looks for their totem and just gets rid of it. I mean, this is extremely inconsistent value. The effect, the 33% slowdown, isn't that bad. I mean, it's really not. But it's just the fact that everybody else can keep repairing while the obsession goes and looks for their totem. It's just, it doesn't do anything to anybody else. It is, even in a full obsession build, I wouldn't recommend this. This is really not very good. All right, and now we are done. Or wait, is this a hex? No, it's not. We're done with the hexes. So we are moving on back to normal perks, back to normal rankings. So yeah. Next we have Hoarder, which is going to go in the D tier as well. I know what this does, but I'll read it out since it's a little bit convoluted. So Hoarder triggers a loud noise notification for 4 seconds when a survivor performs any of the following actions within 64 meters of your location: unlocking a chest or picking up an item. And it also spawns 2 more chests into the trial. So it actually buffs the survivors in exchange for this extremely weak effect as it is. It's not like it even stops them from picking up the item or unlocking a chest. Like, no, it just tells you when they do. Like, as far as information perks go, this is like one of the worst there is. This might be the worst killer perk in the game. Down there was Shattered Hope for sure, but we'll get to that later. Yeah, this is just a weak effect, inconsistent value. Just terrible. Okay. Moving on, we have Hubris, and this is going to be in the C tier. This is, yet again, the definition of a niche perk. This is another perk that people asked for a while, actually. They wanted a perk that exposed survivors when they stunned the killer, and that's what Hubris does. But the reason that it is pretty niche and doesn't get picked so often is because the only way to really maximize value out of this perk is to have it, also have Enduring, also have Spirit Fury. And that's 3 perk slots right there. You only have 1 more after that. And if you dedicate a whole build to it, it can be pretty decent, especially on certain killers like Spirit or Wraith. But yeah, it's the kind of perk that you shouldn't run on its own, and it really does need to lean on at least either Enduring or Spirit Fury, if not both, to be really worth it. So on its own, it's pretty niche. All right. Next we have Human Greed, and this is going to go in the D tier. I do know what this does, but I'll read it out for you guys. The auras of unopened chests are revealed to you at all times, and the auras of survivors coming within 8 meters of unopened or closed chests are revealed to you for 3 seconds. It also gives you the ability to kick chests closed. So if you come across a chest that's open, you can now kick it shut with this perk. And there, for some reason, there is a 20-second cooldown on that ability. I don't understand that at all. But yeah, this is just a really extremely inconsistent value. Like, extremely inconsistent. The effect isn't that bad. The aura reveal is fine, I guess. And the ability to kick chest closed is kind of cool, I guess, but yeah, it's just the value is extremely inconsistent. All right, next we have Hysteria, which is going to go in the C tier. And I'll read this one out for you as well. So whenever you put a healthy survivor into the injured state, all injured survivors suffer from Oblivious for 30 seconds, and it has a cooldown of 30 seconds. So yeah, this is, again, super niche. You'll only ever see this on Legions and Plagues, and that's all it's good on. I would not recommend running this on its own or on any killer that's not Legion or Plague. Next we have I'm All Ears, and this is going to go in the A tier. This is especially good on killers that really capitalize on survivors being locked into animations. Huntress, Pyramid Head, Nurse, even in a way. But yeah, this is really good information in chase. Vecna, not Lich Vecna, Stranger Things Vecna does really well with this as well. This kind of has the same benefits and drawbacks as a perk like Nurse's Calling. It is a teeny bit killer dependent, but nonetheless, even on killers that don't really fall into that, you know, niche category of killers that really benefit from this, it's still good. Even on, you know, like Wraith, this is a solid perk, you know, or like Legion or some other, you know, pretty standard killer. This is still a solid perk. It's good information. It's consistent. Survivors are always going to be vaulting. Yeah, good effect. Excuse me. Next we have Infectious Fright, and that is going to go in the C tier. Infectious Fright makes it so that when you down a survivor, any other nearby survivors scream and reveal their location for like 4 seconds. Again, this is the same thing as Forced Hesitation. It's good on Eerie Flesh Bubba, and it's good combined with Forced Hesitation. On its own, it's just really, really niche and not very good. All right, next we have Insidious. This is going in the D tier. What this perk does is it makes it so that when you stand still for at least 3 seconds, you gain Undetectable, and it goes away as soon as you start moving again. This perk was introduced for basement face camping back in, like, way, way, way back in the day. That is what this was for. But ever since the addition of the anti-face camp meter, this perk is next to useless. You should, like, I mentioned it earlier, but I mean, the only use I can see for this is like with Dragon's Grip, like waiting around a corner to like get a survivor to touch the generator, get exposed, and get a free down. Like that, like on its own, this is genuinely just a weak effect, and the value is going to be extremely inconsistent. Next we have Iron Grasp, and this is going to go in the C tier. Once again, super niche perk. It is good in backpack builds, and that's it. If you have, like, you know, if you're playing like Basement Trapper with Agitation, Iron Grasp, Mad Grit, and Starstruck or something, that is the only time to use this perk. Yeah. Next we have Iron Maiden, and this is also going to go in the C tier. This is, once again, the definition of a niche perk. It makes your locker searching speed a little bit faster, and yet it's still not worth using on Huntress or Trickster for reloads. It's still not, it doesn't make it fast enough to really justify a perk slot for Huntress or Trickster with this. What this is really for, and is extremely underrated for, by the way, is Artist. I never take this perk off on Artist, and at least, I would say once every other game, I get extreme value out of this perk. Survivors will get swarmed with the birds, jump into a locker, and then get exposed, and I get a free down. Like I said, every other game, at least. Sometimes more often than that. And I'm not even an Artist main, so Artist mains, if you have trouble with survivors jumping in lockers, equip Iron Maiden. You won't regret it, trust. But nonetheless, C tier perk, because that's about all it's good for. So, all right, next we have Knockout, and this is going to go in the B tier. Like I said, I don't really remember what the difference between Nothing But Misery and Knockout is. I know the effects are pretty similar. I think Knockout is the one that makes it so that you get hindered when you walk like a certain distance away from a pallet. So, not you as the killer, you hinder the survivors with this perk if they move a certain distance away from the pallet. Like I said, I don't remember exactly. You guys can look it up and check me on this, but I definitely know that it's B tier because either the effect or the value is mediocre. Probably both, if I had to guess. Next, we have Languid Touch, and that is going to go in B tier. This is an anti-exhaustion perk that makes it so that when a survivor scares a crow, they get exhausted. So this can be good for like mid-chase exhausting survivors. It's good for countering dead hard. It's good for countering live, overcome even, smash hit, perks like that, dramaturgy even, maybe, depending on the situation. But it doesn't counter like sprint burst. And I would actually argue it doesn't really counter dramaturgy either, with the way most people use dramaturgy. So yeah, I mean it's you know, it's a mediocre effect. You personally don't really feel the value out of it, but if you do get value, it's the kind of perk like you won't know if you got value out of it till you look at the end game screen and see what perks the survivors had, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's not bad, but it's not great either. All right, next we have Lethal Pursuer, and this is gonna go in the S tier. This is arguably the best killer perk in the game. Basically what it does is it makes it so that you see the auras of all the survivors at the start of the trial for like 5 seconds, maybe 6 seconds, something like that. But the secondary effect is what makes it really good. And that is that it extends all of your aura reading by 2 seconds. So yeah, like that is the real kicker with Lethal Pursuer. It would still be good if it just had that first part. But what makes it S tier is that second part. You will get value out of this every single game, unless every survivor has distortion, because the way it works now, their 1 token would get spent immediately with your Lethal Pursuer, but I use this in 70% of my killer builds, and I don't think I've ever had that happen. And yeah, it's very consistent value, strong effect, strong secondary effect. This perk is great. No notes. Next we have Leverage, and this is going to go in the B tier. Leverage is especially good when combined with something that hemorrhages and mangles the survivors, like Sloppy Butcher or Gift of Pain, or like add-ons that do that. But even then, on its own, it's, you know, it's fine. The effect is pretty good. It slows down healing by 50%. So yeah, I mean, it'll slow down the healing of the unhooker by 50%. And then, of course, if you combine it with the survivor being hemorrhaged and mangled, it's even slower. And that's a good form of slowdown. So yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's fine on its own. Not great, not horrible, pretty mediocre. Next we have Lightborn, and Lightborn is going to go in the B tier. I know that might be a pretty controversial take for a lot of people and in a lot of different ways. Some people would claim Lightborn is S tier, others would complain it's D tier. I don't disagree. Here's what I'll say. I don't disagree when people say that Lightborn is a waste of a perk slot, because it kind of is. In the majority of situations, you can just face a wall, or you can just look around before you pick up a survivor. And you wouldn't even think to need Lightborn after that. But here's the thing. The reason it's not D tier is because the value isn't inconsistent and the effect is not weak. The aura reveal plus the fact that it prevents all blinds is a pretty good effect. But the value is a little bit mediocre. Because just because you see survivors having flashlights in the lobby doesn't mean they're going to be swarming you with flashlights at every instant. You know what I mean? So you can't know when you equip this perk just how much value you're going to get out of it. And I've found that more often than not, when a killer does equip it, or when I've used it in the past, that I don't get a crazy amount of value out of it. Again, the effect is good, but the value is kind of mediocre, and so that's why it's in the B tier. Next we have Machine Learning, and I'm going to put that in the C tier. So here's the thing about Machine Learning. I think it did used to do this, that you could have multiple generators compromised at a time. But I used it in a Chag build on stream several times in the last few weeks, and we've noticed that it doesn't do that anymore, and it doesn't always activate on the last gen anymore because of that. So for that reason, I would say it's pretty niche. It's fine in like full haste builds, like I said, like with Chag, or full undetectable builds. it's fine, but it is pretty niche. If it's still activated on last gen every single time, I could almost see the argument for being B tier, maybe even low A, because that would be consistent value with a pretty good effect, because the effect is fine. It's just it's pretty niche in terms of its consistency. So yeah, that is why it's C tier, unfortunately. I don't know if it's bugged or when they changed that. I don't know, honestly, but yeah. All right, next we have Mad Grit, and that is going to go in the C tier. Mad Grit, again, super niche. It is good in exactly one build, and that is the backpack build, or like basement trapper build. Iron Grasp, Agitation, Mad Grit, and then like either Starstruck or Awaken Awareness or something like that. Like, it's just, that's all it does is make it so that you have no basic attack cooldown when you're carrying a survivor, and hitting a survivor while you're carrying another one causes that survivor's wiggle progression to stop for like a few seconds. So yeah, it's good for backpack builds, and that's it. Definition of a niche perk. Next we have Make Your Choice, and that's going to go in the B tier. This perk is slightly reliant on killers to have mobility or like a teleport. Certain killers excel with this, like Dredge or Unknown or even like Hag. But the value, the effect is fine. It's I'd say it's even good. 60 seconds of exposed is good, but the value you will see out of it is mediocre most of the time. I can't remember the last time I got more than one down in a game because of this perk. So just keep that in mind. It's not, yeah, it's really just, it's a fine perk. It's not bad, it's not good, it just is. Next we have Merciless Storm, and that is going to go in the C tier. Once again, super niche. You will find this perk does really well against survivors that are newer to the game because they struggle with the repeated skill checks. But it really shines in the niche of Doctor and the combination with like Unnerving Presence on Doctor. You don't even need to combine it with Unnerving Presence, but even on its own with Doctor, that can be tough. I will say Unnerving Presence plus Merciless Storm plus tier 2 Madness Doctor, I still struggle to hit those skill checks. So, and again, I've been playing this game for 10 years. So yeah, that is the one niche where it can be pretty good. Even again, on its own on Doctor, it's pretty solid, but that is all it's good for. On its own, on the majority of the killer roster, it's just not very good. Next, we have Mindbreaker, and we're going to put Mindbreaker in the A tier. This is probably the best anti-exhaustion perk in the game because it is the only one that is really good at countering the pretty meta playstyle right now of pre-run with Sprint Burst and Hold W across the map. Mindbreaker hard counters that. It's also really good on killers like Springtrap or Xenomorph that have their, or Onryo, killers that have their teleports right next to generators. Because, you know, again, survivors can't just like sprint burst away for free, well, on a generator if you have this perk. So yeah, if you're looking for anti-exhaustion perks, Mindbreaker is probably your best bet for countering like sprint burst and Lithe. Languid Touch is also good for like Lithe, Dead Hard, Overcome. Genetic Limits really shines with, and it again, hard counters, Dead Hard, Iron Will, and Overcome. So yeah, that's kind of like the lineup of exhaustion perks, or anti-exhaustion perks. So yeah, Mindbreaker, very solid perk, consistent value, good effect. Yeah, nothing, no notes, good perk. Next we have Monitor and Abuse, and we're gonna put that in the B tier. Let's read this one. So it increases the base value of your terror radius by 8 meters for the whole trial, but when you're not in chase with the survivor, it reduces your terror radius by 16 meters. So yeah, I mean, this is just the definition of a mediocre effect. This is like, the value is also pretty mediocre. I mean, I guess in a literal sense, the value is consistent because you will get value out of this every game. Like, it will happen every game. But the effect itself is kind of mediocre. Yeah, just whatever. Meh. Next we have Nemesis, and this is going to go in the C tier. Nemesis. So any survivor who blinds you or stuns you using a pallet or a locker becomes the obsession, and anytime your obsession switches to another survivor by any means, that survivor suffers from the oblivious status effect for 60 seconds and their aura is revealed to you for 4 seconds. So yeah, again, another super niche obsession build perk. This is the kind of perk that you should only run if you're running a full obsession build. It's good for that. It's very good for that, but on its own, it's just, yeah, not worth bringing, sorry. Next we have No Quarter, and this is going to go in the D tier. This is just a weak effect. Basically, this is the merciless storm of self-heals. It's exactly what it sounds like. If you are self-healing with a med kit for the last, like, 25% of the heal, you'll get bombarded with the skill checks. Or here, I'm not exactly sure if that's accurate here. Yeah, so when a survivor healing themselves by any means reaches 75%, No Quarter triggers. They're faced with a continuous stream of skill checks. They're just like the Merciless Storm ones. If they fail, or if the action is interrupted, then they will become broken for 30 seconds. So, yeah, I mean, the effect is fine, the broken effect, I guess, but the value that you will get out of this is extremely inconsistent. Survivors generally don't and shouldn't spend a whole lot of time self-healing. It's become a little more common now that syringes and styptics have been nerfed, but even then, self-healing is more often than not pretty inefficient. Actually, yeah, all the time is inefficient. Every single self-heal perk and item in the game heals you slower than a teammate healing you. So yeah, I mean, if survivors are self-healing, you're already benefiting from it. This perk is just, yeah, it's just not good. That's all. Next we have No Way Out, and this is going to go in the S tier. This was the other perk I was talking about when I was talking about Noah, and I said that there's one other perk that is an endgame perk that you don't need a full endgame build for it to be good, and that is No Way Out. No Way Out makes it so that you get a token every time you hook a survivor for the first time, so you can have up to 4. And for each token you have, the exit gates will be blocked upon triggering them for 12 seconds. There's a base value of 12 seconds, assuming you don't hook anybody. So it can be up to a minute total. And that is really good endgame slowdown and can really help you snowball in the endgame sometimes. It makes it so that you have something else to do besides camp a hook if you get a hook like right after the last gen pops or something. And yeah, I mean, it's still good in full endgame builds, but it's fine even on its own. Excuse me. Yeah, this perk, sometimes I'll bring it in some builds like on its own. It's especially good if you find that you're getting to the end game in a lot of games. But yeah, I mean, it's just a really, really good perk. Consistent value, strong effect, great perk. Next we have None Are Free, and this is going to go in the C tier. Ooh, C tier. None Are Free is basically crowd control plus blood favor without the hexes in the endgame. So it operates the same way as No Way Out. You get a token each time you hook a survivor for the first time, so you can have up to 4. And for each token that you get, every pallet and window on the map will be blocked for 15 seconds immediately following the repair of the last generator. So all the pallets and windows can be blocked for up to 60 seconds. And this can really help if you're running a full endgame build on a weaker killer. I run this in my goalkeeper trapper build, for instance, because that is that this plus no end makes it a lot easier to snowball in the end game and get multiple people on the hook or something. So yeah, but that is about all it's good for. It's good in very specific full end game builds on very specific killers. Next we have Nowhere to Hide, and this is going to go in the S tier. Nowhere to Hide is a perk. It's a night perk. It makes it so that when you kick a generator, any survivors within like 24 meters of the of not the generator that you kicked, but of you get revealed to you. So this is one of those perks that is really good on the majority of killers, but is extremely good on the best killers. You will almost never see a nurse without this perk. It's a little less common on Blight, but that's mainly because a lot of Blight players like to stack 4 slowdowns, but it's really good on Blight. It's really good on Billy. It's really good on Krazu. It's really good on Ghoul. It's a very solid information perk, and the reason for that is because, again, the aura reveal follows the killer. It doesn't stick to the generator. So imagine I'm playing nurse and I kick the generator and I blink, I hold my blink and I go 20 meters away. Then it shows me everyone within 24 meters of me. So it really helps when survivors pre-run you as well after they hear you coming to the gen or see you coming to the gen. So yeah, this perk is consistent value, strong effect. Again, even on weaker killers, this is still good. It's great information, but on the strongest killers, it is even stronger. So next we have Oppression. Yes, Oppression. And this is going to go in the A tier. Oppression is consistent in terms of value, assuming you're kicking gens, and the effect is good. Basically what it does, here, I will read it because it's a bit convoluted. So when you damage a generator, it activates Oppression. This will cause up to 3 additional generators to also start regressing. And it'll trigger a difficult skill check for all survivors currently repairing an affected generator. So I like to use this on Doctor because of the difficult skill check, but even without that, right? Like even if survivors do hit that skill check, the fact that it causes up to 3 additional generators to start regressing is really good. It makes it so that you don't have to go and individually kick each generator. So killers without a lot of mobility can really take advantage of this perk. And the cooldown's only 40 seconds now, so it's really not bad. It is a consistent value kind of perk with a good effect. Next we have Overcharge, and this is also going to go in the A tier. It's pretty similar to Oppression, but we'll read it anyway. So yeah, it also gives a difficult skill check. So you kick the gen and it starts regressing. And the next time a survivor interacts with that generator, even if it fully regresses, it'll start with a tiny skill check. But if they fail that skill check, it'll instantly regress the generator by 4% of its maximum possible progression in addition to the default progression penalty, so 9% total. Not only that, though, if after Overcharge is applied to the generator, the following effect also applies. It increases the regression speed from 85% to 130 over the next 30 seconds. So if the gen is left alone for that 30 seconds, it can regress almost completely just from that one kick. So yeah, I mean, it's a very solid perk. It's slightly inconsistent compared to other regression perks. This is why you don't see it too often. But again, I like to run this on Doctor because of the difficult skill check. But even without that, it's a solid perk. You know, consistent value, good effect. Next we have Overwhelming Presence, and this is going to go in the B tier. This recently got a change, so I'll read it. When using an item, survivors within your terror radius suffer from inefficiency, and when using an item, its depletion rate is increased by 100%. So basically, if you have an 8-second flashlight on you as a survivor with no add-ons to increase the time, it'll only last 4 seconds. So yeah, I mean, this is, you know, the fact that it's limited to your terror radius, the inefficiency thing, makes it the value a little bit mediocre, but the effect is not bad at all. That is a pretty solid effect, and that's why it's in the B tier. Especially for, like, med kits and toolboxes. Next we have a Phantom Fear, and that is going to go in the B tier. And yeah, okay, there's no description, but basically what it does is it has a pretty long cooldown. I want to say 60 seconds, and any survivor, when it's off cooldown, that's in your terror radius and looks at you, they'll scream. But only one survivor can do it. So it's kind of like Scene Partner, but for killers. The killers that really do well with this are ones with bigger terror radiuses that can close mobility, or that have high mobility and can close distance gaps very quickly. Ghoul especially does very well with this perk. Blight can do very well with this perk. Wesker can do very well with this perk. But outside of that, it's one of the more mediocre information perks. I would say that the effect is good, but the value is mediocre, especially because the cooldown is so long. So yeah. Next we have Play with Your Food, and that is going to go in the B tier. Kind of convoluted, so we'll read. Grants a stackable 5% haste status effect per token, up to a maximum of 15%, so you can have up to 3 tokens. But in order to get this, you have to let your obsession escape chase. Like, you have to chase them and then let them escape chase, so you're just wasting time to get these stacks. And on top of that, if you perform a basic or special attack on any survivor, not just the obsession, you lose tokens. So on its own, this perk is just, I mean, mediocre value at best. And you really, but with the perk like this, you can't ignore it. You have to actively engage with it, and you have to actively make sure the decisions you are making benefit this perk. That's what I've noticed as somebody who's used it here and there on certain killers. Like, it's not the kind of perk that you can just equip and forget about and let it work for you in the background. You have to actively engage with it. When combined with other haste perks, it's definitely not bad. It has its place for sure. But the effect, while good, has some mediocre value with it, just because of the engagement that you have to have with it. So it's not C tier, not quite, but if I was ordering the perks within the tiers here, this would definitely be the bottom of B tier. Next we have Pop Goes the Weasel, and this is going to go in the S tier. This is a clown perk that makes it so that when you kick a generator, you regress it instantly by, they just changed it, so bear with me here. I want to say it's 15% of the total possible progression. Before it was 20% of progression, but I think now it's 15% of total possible progression. So it's technically a buff, outside of like gens that were like 90+%. At every other point, it is a buff. So yeah, I mean, this perk was already S tier and it got a buff. So I mean, not that I'm, you know, upset about it. I like Pop. I think it's a pretty good regression perk on especially killers that have high mobility. The problem is that it can only be used on one generator at a time. So if you accidentally go to like a generator that doesn't have as much progress as another one, then you kind of waste the perk. So you kind of need information to go with it. I like to use Jagged Compass with it, since that shows you the aura of the generator with the most progress after you hook somebody. You could also do like Hex Hive Mind, but even then, on its own, it's still very solid on most killers, you know. Consistent effect, or consistent value, strong effect, no notes. Next we have Predator, and that is going to go in the C tier, because it is the definition of a niche perk. This perk is good on Stranger Things Vecna. It's good on Nurse. Sometimes Huntress, but that's about it. There are virtually no killers that can really capitalize on the information that this perk gives you, outside of those ones I just listed and maybe a few more. The effect is good, but it has a long cooldown and the value is niche, because again, it's pretty killer specific. So yeah. Next we have Rancor. This is going to go in the B tier. Oop, there we go. 1 second. All right, Rancor. So what Rancor does is, here, there are some other effects that I don't want to screw up here. Each time a generator is completed, the following effects apply. Reveals your aura to the obsession for 3 seconds, and all survivors' locations are revealed to you for 3 seconds. Once the exit gates are powered, the following effects apply. You are granted the ability to kill the obsession by your own hand, and the obsession suffers from a permanent exposed status effect. Okay, so on its own, the effect is good, but the value is mediocre, because a lot of the time the obsession will know that you have this and then like hide and make sure that you can't find them, and then they'll just escape. So I mean, on its own, value is pretty mediocre. But in full obsession builds or full endgame builds, this can really shine. In full obsession builds, you can mori multiple people with Rancor, assuming you're able to transfer the obsession with something like Nemesis or Game of Foot, you know? So that's really where this perk shines, but on its own, it's mediocre. Next, we have Rapid Brutality. That's going to go in the A tier. This is a perk that is especially helpful for a lot of M1 killers or killers that rely on their M1s a little bit more for damage, like Lich, for instance. Not an M1 killer, technically, since he can damage other ways, but Rapid Brutality is really good on him because, you know, it stacks with his fly speed. So you M1 a survivor, and then use your Rapid Brutality speed boost plus your fly. You'll catch up to them even faster, and you can down them even faster. But even then, still good on M1 killers as well, like Clown or Doctor or Ghostface or Skull Merchant. But yeah, I mean, consistent value. It'll always activate when you get a hit, and it's a good effect. So yeah. Next we have, sorry, Remember Me. Oh, yeah, because the Krause perks are all the way down here. Ravenous, excuse me. Ravenous is gonna go in the B tier. Ravenous makes it so that other survivors get exposed when you hook a is it hook or is it hit? I can't remember. It's either when you hit or hook a survivor nearby other ones. It'll cause the nearby survivors to become exposed. It's kind of underrated in the sense that, you know, I don't think I've ever seen this perk used outside of the Adept when Krause came out. But it's like a slightly different and nerfed down version of Friends Till the End. It's definitely not bad. It's a good effect, but the value is mediocre. That's what I'll say, because the expose doesn't last very long. I don't remember how long it is, but it's not very long. So yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's not a great perk, but it's not bad either. It is underrated. Like I said, I'm surprised. Like I said, I don't think I have seen this once since Krause came out outside of the Adept. So definitely underrated because it's being treated like I've seen Shattered Hope more often than I've seen Ravenous. Like, yeah. Next we have Remember Me. And that is going to go in the C tier. Remember Me on its own is pretty niche because all it takes is just having the obsession do the gate, or just having the obsession avoid chase altogether, you know? It kind of forces you to focus the obsession if it's the only perk of this nature that you have. It is good in full endgame builds though, because if you get a full 5 tokens of this and the door is going that slow, a lot of survivors will just be like, okay, just open it, and then you combine it with Blood Warden and then they're fucked. So yeah, I mean, on its own, niche. Yeah, it's just a niche perk, you know? Good for endgame builds, and that's about it. All right, next we have Stabiffle. This is going to go in the A tier. Stabiffle is a token-based perk. You get a token every single time you hit a survivor other than the obsession. And for each token that you get, how much is it? For each token that you get a stackable 4% cooldown reduction to your, cooldown reduction to your basic attack. So up to 32% if you have a full 8 stacks. And that can be game changing. I actually had this happen last night. My friends and I were playing against an Onryo, and she had Stabiffle, and it made it impossible for us to get the hook save in the end game. We had to leave one of our friends behind. So yeah, I mean, that's really what it's good for. Of course, it is limited to M1 killers, and you do have to ignore the obsession because every time you hit the obsession, you lose 2 tokens. But if you get a full 8 tokens on this, it is very good. This is a consistent value, good effect kind of perk. Yeah. No notes. Next we have Starstruck, and this is gonna go in the C tier. Just a niche perk. It is good in I'm sorry, backpack builds or with like agitation. You don't even need to run a full backpack build, but if you want to really get value out of this, you need agitation, or awakened awareness, or both. On its own, it's just, yeah, it's just a niche perk. Next, we have Scourge Hook, Floods of Rage. So now we're getting into the Scourge Hook perks. These are being judged like normal perks, not like hexes. Yeah, they're just being treated like all the other perks, just in case you were wondering. So starting off with Scourge Hook, Floods of Rage. This is gonna go in the A tier. This is a consistent value, good effect kind of perk, you know? It's basically every time a survivor gets unhooked from a Scourge Hook, this perk will activate and it'll show you the auras of every survivor on the map, including the one that just got unhooked, unless they have like off the record or something like that. For how many seconds? 7 seconds. 9 with lethal. So, yeah, it's very solid. If you're running a full Scourge Hook build, definitely has its place, but even on its own, it's really good. I see people running this all the time by itself or with just pain res or whatever. So, yeah, consistent value, good effect. Next, we have Scourge Hook, Gift of Pain, also known as Weeping Wounds, right? I think that's what it's called, Weeping Wounds? I don't know. I own Pinhead, so it's Gift of Pain to me, and it always will be. This is going to go in... yeah, there it is. It's all the way at the bottom here for some reason. S tier. So basically what this perk does is when you get unhooked from a Scourge Hook, you will be hit with Hemorrhage and Mangled. So it's already going to take longer to heal you. But if you do heal, then you will have a 16% hit to your repair speed. So you have the option of either staying injured and, you know, being hemorrhaged and mangled, which means you'll bleed more and be easier to track and everything. And also obviously be only 1 hit. Or you can heal and take the 16% hit to repair speed. So it's kind of one of those perks that forces the survivors into a lose-lose. It is also extremely synergistic with leverage. Really good for that. It used to be even stronger, but it's still very strong now. And yeah, just a really solid perk for both anti-heal and gen slowdown. So great perk. Next, we have, I don't know here. Oh, Scourge Hook, Hangman's Trick. That is a D tier perk for sure. What this perk does is it makes it so that you have, well, you have your normal 4 Scourge Hooks, and while you're carrying a survivor, and only while you're carrying a survivor, it will reveal the auras of survivors next to your Scourge Hooks, and only your Scourge Hooks. So yeah, this is just a weak effect. Extremely inconsistent value, because the only time you will get value out of this is if you're going against a Sabo squad. And even then, it's not like it actually helps you fight the Sabo squad, it just tells you that they're there. And again, it's just, yeah, inconsistent value, weak effect, just bad. It's just straight up bad. Next, we have Scourge Hook, Jagged Compass, which is actually one of my favorite Scourge Hooks personally, and we're going to put that in the A tier. What this does is it allows you to create more than 4 Scourge Hooks. What it does is if you hook a survivor on a non-Scourge Hook, when they get unhooked from it, it'll become a Scourge Hook. But if you hook a survivor on a Scourge Hook, it will show you the aura of the generator with the most progress in yellow for like a few seconds. So this is really good for knowing where to use pop, where to go pressure. It is a very solid information perk, and obviously the effect of creating other Scourge Hooks can be really nice if your RNG sucks. This definitely has its place in a full Scourge Hook build. I would not recommend doing a full Scourge Hook build without this perk. Super underrated. Yeah, sometimes I like to just use it on its own. Yeah, it's very consistent. In terms of value, especially because of the effect to create new scourge hooks, and it's a good effect. So yeah. Next we have Scourge Hook Monstrous Shrine. Yep, there it is, sorry. And that's gonna go in the C tier. So what this does is it creates your 4 normal Scourge hooks, and then it also turns all of your basement hooks into Scourge hooks as well. And what it does is it progresses the sacrifice progress by 20, it accelerates it by 20% if you're further than 24 meters from the hook survivor. And this doesn't just apply for the basement Scourge hooks, it applies for all of your Scourge hooks. So if you're running a full Scourge hook build, I could see the niche for it. It's also, you know, niche in the sense that you could run like a basement build or whatever. And this is kind of underrated, the 20% faster sacrifice progress, especially with 70-second hook stages now. So yeah, I mean, if you're running a full Scourge hook build, or like a basement build of some kind, this definitely has its place. But that is about all it's good for. And finally, we have the strongest Scourge Hook perk there is, and that is Scourge Hook Pain Resonance. This is definitely S tier. Basically what this does is you have 4 tokens at the start of the trial. Each time you hook a survivor for the first time on a Scourge Hook, this will activate. And I want to say it's, yeah, 20%. So the generator with the most progression will explode and instantly regress by 20% of its total progress. And all the survivors who were on that generator will scream. And this is especially good for synergy with Dead Man's Switch. If survivors don't let go of the gen before it pain reses, they will get kicked off with their scream, and then they'll get hit with DMS as well. So, but even on its own, I mean, this perk is consistent and very strong. So, yeah. Some people might say this is the strongest killer perk. I disagree. I think it's either lethal or corrupt. Probably corrupt, but this is definitely the strongest regression perk that the game has for killers. And I believe it is the most picked as well, with like a 35% pick rate or something like that. So, yeah. All right, done with the Scourge hooks. We are moving on to, ooh, that's a Vecna perk, Secret Project. We're gonna put that in the C tier. So what this does is it makes it so that when you are repairing, or when a survivor cleanses a totem, I think all generators. I don't think it's just one. I'm not totally sure because I know the wiki doesn't have it, so I can't check, but I think all generators get blocked. And the other secondary effect of this is that when generators are blocked, you get undetectable. So this is especially synergistic with Grim Embrace, Dead Man's Switch, Corrupt Intervention. With that said, it does require you to kind of run a hex or a gen blocking perk, because on its own you're not going to get a whole lot of value out of it, which is why I have it in the C tier, since it is pretty niche for that reason. All right, next we have Septic Touch, and that is going to go in the D tier. I will read this one out for you guys. Whenever a survivor performs a healing action while they're inside your terror radius, that survivor suffers from blindness and exhausted. This effect lingers for 10 seconds after the healing action is interrupted by any means. So not only do the survivors have to be in your terror radius, the effects they get are blindness and exhausted. I mean, blindness isn't really affecting the majority of survivors, especially when it only lingers for 10 seconds like this. The reason Third Seal is so good at blindness is because it's permanent until the totem gets cleansed, but this isn't permanent. This just goes away after a little bit. Same with the exhausted. And it has the terror radius requirement too. It's just extremely inconsistent in terms of the value. And on top of that, any value that you do get as the killer, you're not going to know until the game is over, because you can't know what exhaustion perk survivors have and whatnot until this perk like stops them from being used. You know what I mean? So it's like, this is just one of those perks that has a really weak effect, and the value, and I guess the effect isn't too weak. The blindness is fine, I guess, but yeah, it's just inconsistent, the value. So, all right, next we have Shadowborn, and this is going to go in D tier as well. Shadowborn, I know what it does, but I want to read it. I thought there was more to it than this. Never mind, I guess. If I'm blinded by any means, you are granted 10% haste for 10 seconds. This is a weak effect. I mean, the only time where you're really gonna notice that Shadowborn made a difference for you is when the survivor had Champion of Light. Because instead of getting 50% hindered, you'll get 40% hindered, and they won't make as much distance on you, I guess. That is that is really the only time that you will notice this effect. So extremely inconsistent. If you're wanting to counter flashlights without having to look at walls, Lightborn is the unequivocally better option. This is terrible. Yeah. All right, next we have Shattered Hope, and this is agreed upon, I'd say, pretty widely at least, to be the worst killer perk in the game. So obviously gonna go in the D tier. What this does is it allows you to permanently break boon totems. So as you guys know, when a killer snuffs a boon totem, which only takes 1 second, it kills the boon, but not the totem. So the perks get removed from the totem, but the survivor can go back to the same totem and relight it with their perks. Shattered Hope changes that. It makes it so that when you snuff a boon totem, the totem is broken and they cannot reuse that totem. Obviously, the glaring issue with this perk is that when you bring it into a trial, you cannot know if survivors have boons ahead of time or not. You can maybe make a guess if you see like a survivor holding a map or something, but even then, just because a survivor has a map, especially with the way maps work now, it's not guaranteed that they have boons. So, and then again, there are plenty of survivors that bring boons without bringing maps. So you cannot know when you bring this perk into a trial if the survivors have boons. And if they don't, you've literally just wasted a perk slot. There is no secondary effect to this perk. There is no anything. Like, you literally cannot use this perk if the survivors don't have boons, which again, you can't know ahead of time. So for that reason, this perk is just, the effect is weak, the value is worse than inconsistent. It's like non-existent. Yeah, just a terrible, terrible perk. All right, next we have Sloppy Butcher. This is gonna go in the A tier. Sloppy Butcher is a perk that makes it so that anytime you hit a survivor with a basic attack, they become hemorrhage and mangled for 70 seconds, I think. 70, maybe? 90 seconds, excuse me. 90 seconds. So yeah, this is just a really, really bare bones good perk. This is consistent value. You will get value out of it every single time you hit a survivor with a basic attack. And yeah, it's just good. It is good effect, consistent value, no notes. Next we have Spies from the Shadows. This is gonna go in the B tier. I think this perk is slightly underrated. It's underrated in the sense that most people will tell you it's just bad, and I disagree with that. I think it's fine. Spies from the Shadows basically makes it so that, here, I'll just read it. When you are within 36 meters of a crow that was startled by a nearby survivor, you are alerted with a loud noise notification, and it has a cooldown of 5 seconds. So, yeah, I mean, it's solid information, you know, if you're a nearby survivor, but the problem is that there are just so many better aura reading perks. Like, why would you bring Spies when you have nowhere to hide? Or, I don't know, yeah, but, like, Spies from the Shadows is literally just, it's not bad by any means, it's just outclassed by aura reading, and that makes sense. It came out in 2016 with the base game, so it's just, and that was before aura reading. I mean, I guess there was still aura reading, but it was very limited. So Spies from the Shadows and Whispers and perks like that were good picks back then when you didn't have 20 aura reading perks to choose from. But yeah, it's mediocre. The effect is mediocre. It's not great, it's not horrible. All right, next we have Spirit Fury, and this is going to go in the B tier. Once again, when combined with Enduring, you know, we discussed this when we discussed Enduring earlier. Enduring and Spirit Fury together are an S tier combination, unequivocally. But each perk being judged on their own, we have to look at it a little bit differently. So Spirit Fury makes it so that each time you break a pallet, you get a token, and when you get 2 tokens, the next pallet that stuns you will automatically break. That's why it's so good with Enduring. With that said, though, Spirit Fury on its own is kind of just underwhelming, I guess. The effect is mediocre because it doesn't really matter if the pellet automatically breaks if you still have to sit through the entire 2-point-something second stun. Enduring and Spirit Fury are so good together because when you get stunned, the pellet instantly breaks and you can just keep walking forward, basically. There's basically no stun time. But Spirit Fury on its own is a little bit more mediocre. Once again, the combo, S tier. Each perk on its own, a little bit different. Enduring is definitely the better choice if you only want to run one of them, though. All right, next we have Star... Oh, no, I already did Starstruck earlier. I don't know why it was all the way up there. I think about it. That's weird. All right, well, Whispers is next, I guess. And Whispers is going to go in the D tier. It suffers from the same problem as Spies from the Shadows. It's just outclassed by aura reading perks. The problem with Whispers is that it's also outclassed by literally every other information perk in the game. Not to mention that it's unusable to people who are hard of hearing or deaf because the indicator, the whispers, are literal. They are whispers from the entity that you hear when you get close to a survivor. I want to say within 36 meters, maybe. Obviously, this is unusable to people with accessibility problems when it comes to hearing. So, yeah, this perk is literally useless to somebody like me. And it's just, even for the people who can use it and get value out of it, aura reading perks and other information perks are just objectively better than this. Because this just gives you an indicator that you're near a survivor, but it doesn't tell you where they are like an aura reading perk does. Next we have Superior Anatomy, and this is going to go in the C tier. On its own, Superior Anatomy is very kind of underwhelming. All it does is increase your vault speed by 40%. I think it's 40%. Yeah, 40%, but it has a 30-second cooldown, and in order to get activated, a survivor has to do a rush vault within 8 meters of your location. So, yeah. I mean, in a full vault speed build, like with Dark Arrogance and Bamboozle, or even just Bamboozle, it's solid, but on its own, it's very, yeah, it's just niche because it relies on those other perks. And I've just now realized that that was not Whispers, that was Strider. I am so sorry, you guys. Still, though, Strider is in the D tier, so I wasn't really wrong, but I will correct myself here. And you know what Whispers does now, so when we get there, I won't have to cover it. But Strider, what it does is it increases the grunts of pain by 50% and increases the volume of regular breathing by 25%. Yeah, this, I guess, is nice if you're hard of hearing. I've never used it, and I am hard of hearing, so that should tell you something. Part of the reason that they don't recommend that you use this, especially on like a killer like Spirit, is because you will start to rely on it. You will forget how to track survivors based on their normal sounds, and it'll screw you up later down the line. So steer clear of Strider, unless, I would say unless you are hard of hearing, in which case, go for it. But I don't think you should have to give up a perk slot for accessibility. You're better off, especially if you have a PC, just messing with your volume settings or whatever, you know? All right, next we have Surge, and that is going to go in the A tier. So Surge is a regression perk, and basically when you down a survivor with a basic attack, any generators within 32 meters of your location will explode and start regressing. Yeah, and it instantly regresses them by 8%, and then they'll keep regressing. So yeah, very solid perk, especially on M1 killers, because, you know, the whole basic attack requirement, obviously. I would recommend using this on a lot of special attack-based killers like Nurse or Blight or whatever, but they have eruptions, so they're fine. Surge is good. I like to use it on Deathslinger, Ghostface, killers like that. Even like Ghoul can use Surge pretty well since they have to down survivors with the basic attack. So yeah, good perk, you know, consistent value, good effect. Yeah. The only reason it's not S tier is because it is limited to M1 killers, or killers that have to down with M1s at the very least. All right, next we have Surveillance. This is going to go in the B tier, and this is a bit convoluted, so we'll read it out. The auras of regressing generators are highlighted in white. If the regression progress is interrupted on a generator, its aura will be highlighted in yellow for 16 seconds. Surveillance increases the audible range of survivors' generator repair noises by 8 meters. So yeah, it's, you know, it's a good effect. It's good information. It's more of a mediocre effect. Yeah. As far as like information perks go, it's definitely not bad, but it is mediocre. The value you can get out of it can be pretty consistent, especially if you run like Ruin or something with this. Yeah, but the effect is kind of mediocre. Next we have, let me just make sure it's the same on here. Oh, this is Terminus. Okay. Terminus is going to go in the C tier. This is basically a counter to Adrenaline. What this does is when the last generator pops, all injured survivors become broken until the gates are open, and then it lingers for 60 seconds. So this can be pretty solid for preventing survivors from resetting and coming for a save in the end game. Because, I mean, the fact that they're broken until they open the gates can also force them to open it for, like, Blood Warden, right? But on top of that, the 60-second linger, that's like almost as long as a hook stage. So if you hook somebody before they can even start working on a gate, they will not be able to save that survivor unless they already have people who are healthy. Now, of course, that is the downside, I guess, is the fact that like you have to have a lot of people injured. So like towards the end of the game, you got to start hit and running, you know? And again, like I said, it hard counters Adrenaline, so that's nice. But it is niche. This is, you know, the kind of perk that certain killers like Plague and Legion will really benefit from. Other killers might struggle to get a lot of value. And it is especially good in like endgame builds, but that's about it. So it's definitely still niche. Next we have Territorial Imperative, and that is going to go in the D tier. What this does is it basically just gives you a notification when survivors go in the basement. Now, survivors should never be going in the basement of their own accord. The chest is not worth it. Chests are a bad time investment. Invocations are a waste of time. The Sable Self-Heal perk is a sandbagging perk. Yeah, there's like no reason for survivors to ever be going in the basement. So this is really only going to help you if you're a basement camper, I guess. And like the survivor sneaks past you and gets into the basement, and now you know they're in there. Like, yeah, it's just a weak effect, inconsistent value, just not good. All right, next we have Thanatophobia, which is going to go in the C tier. This perk, in order to get max value, we talked about it at the very beginning of the video, it was my example for a C tier perk. It is the definition of niche, right? It is only good on Plague and Legion. And if you somehow, again, on any other killer, go against an entire team of survivors that just never heal. But if they see you have this perk, they're going to start healing. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, this perk is just, it only gets real value when everybody is injured, and only 2 killers are really good at keeping the entire team injured. So yeah, just niche perk. Not a bad effect, but a niche perk. Next we have Thrilling Tremors. This is going to go in the B tier. So a lot of people would say that this is bad because at face value it looks like a slowdown perk, but it's not. It's an information perk. What it does is when you pick up a survivor, the entity will block any generators that survivors are not actively repairing. So this will tell you which generators survivors are working on while you're carrying a survivor. So yeah, it's decent information so that you know where to go to start your next chase. But compared to other information perks, and especially aura reading perks, it is a little bit mediocre. So yeah, I mean, not terrible, not great. Next we have Thwack, and this is going to go in the B tier. This perk is slightly convoluted, so I will read it. All right, you start the trial with 3 tokens, and whenever you break a breakable wall or a drop pallet, you'll consume 1 token, and it'll cause all survivors in 24 meters of your location to scream and reveal their location for 5 seconds. And when you hook a survivor, you can get 1 more token. So, yeah. The only reason this is mediocre, in my opinion, at least in terms of value, is because if you are chasing a survivor and you break a pallet or breakable wall, you probably already know where they are. Like, this isn't going to help you locate a survivor and chase because you probably already know where they are if they just threw a pallet and you're now breaking it. You know what I'm saying? So I can see this being valuable if there's like a survivor lurking for a flashlight save and you've just downed somebody and you break a pallet at the loop that you guys were just at. I guess it's okay for that. But yeah, I mean, it's not, this isn't like, it's just mediocre, you know? All right, next we have Tinkerer, and this is going to go in the A tier. Tinkerer is especially good on killers with mobility that can, you know, get to the gen that is about to pop pretty quickly, because this will notify you at, I believe, 70%, and you get undetectable for 16 seconds, so it gives you a little bit of time to get over there. But again, especially good on killers that can close that distance. Nonetheless, though, the information and the value, meaning the undetectable, is consistent, and it is a good effect, so A tier. Next we have Trail of Torment, which is also going in the A tier. Oh, not the B tier, the A tier. This perk, it makes it so that when you kick a generator, it will turn yellow and be revealed to all the survivors, and you will be undetectable until they stop the regression on that gen, or until the generator gets to 0%. So it's indefinite undetectable, especially if you hang out near the gen or something. You can prevent survivors from closing that regression, but even then, super consistent value. I think it has a cooldown, but it's not a long one. Yeah, it's a 30-second cooldown, so not bad at all. I mean, this is pretty good. You know, it has its place in a lot of builds. Obviously, in full undetectable builds, it's probably a little bit better, or gen kick builds even. But nonetheless, it's still, you know, yeah, consistent value, good effect. All right, next we have Turn Back the Clock, and what's that? It's gonna go in A tier. This is a newer Vecna perk, and it's a regression perk. It makes it so that you can essentially remotely regress generators as long as you have line of sight on the generator, and it works once after you hook a survivor. So it's like pop like that. It only works once after you've hooked a survivor, but remote regression, still very good. Obviously better on some maps than others, like, because again, you have to have line of sight on the gen. So on indoor maps, this is going to be a little bit less useful, but still, I mean, consistent value, good effect. So yeah. All right, next we have Ultimate Weapon. Is that what that one is? Yes, Ultimate Weapon. That's gonna go in the B tier. So this perk used to be meta, and then it got nerfed. And even though it did get nerfed pretty significantly and nobody uses it now, I think it's a little bit underrated. Because it's not that much worse than it used to be. I think B tier is fair for it. Here. So when you open a locker, all survivors within 32 meters of the locker scream and reveal their location to you, and this causes them to suffer from blindness for 30 seconds, and it has a cooldown of 60 seconds. So that's the worst part about it, obviously, is the 60-second cooldown. But the thing that used to be so good about it is that it was like nowhere to hide. You were the object, right? So it was all survivors within 32 meters of you, and if you moved, it counted. So like if you, moved 20 meters away from the locker you opened, and there was a survivor within 32 meters of you, it would make them scream. So that's what made it so good. That's not the case anymore. It's only survivors within 32 meters of the locker, which is a pretty small range. So I get why people don't like it as much anymore. But I think, the effect is, it's mediocre, and the value is mediocre too. So I think B tier is fair for it. Next we have, I want to say that one is, this one's I think this is Unbound. I'm not totally sure. Unbound, I'm just going to say here, Unbound, Undone, Unforeseen. If I'm wrong about that, I'm sorry, but I'm calling this one Unbound. So if I'm wrong, I'm sorry about that. Wait, can I check here? Yeah, I can. Okay, yeah, Unbound, perfect. I didn't know this one had the icons. I wasn't really paying attention. So anyway, Unbound activates for 30 seconds after a survivor becomes injured, and it grants you 5% haste for 10 seconds after you vault a window. So, I mean, sorry, Unbound, see. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty niche. It can be good in full vault speed builds. I've seen it before used with like Bamboozle, Superior Anatomy, and Dark Arrogance. So you vault super fast and then you zoom kind of fast after you vault the window. It can really throw survivors off, but it is niche nonetheless. Yeah. Next we have Undone, and this is going to go in the D tier. This is the Unknown's worst perk. This one's kind of convoluted, so I'll read it. Whenever a survivor fails a skill check while repairing or healing, Undone gains 3 tokens up to a maximum of 30. Performing the damage generator action on a generator consumes all accumulated tokens and applies the following effects. Instantly regresses the damage generator by -1% per token of its total progression, blocks the damage generator for 1 second per token, and causes the damage generator to start regressing once it becomes unblocked. It has a cooldown of 60 seconds for some reason. So this is, it's not even good on Doctor, okay? It is decent on Doctor. As somebody who used to main him, I didn't find this perk to be especially useful on him even. Like, I like the perks I have on him now. So yeah, this is just, it's extremely convoluted. It requires survivor input for you to get value. I mean, as you get better at the game and start going against better survivors, they're going to stop missing skill checks as much. It's just the way it is. So, yeah, this is a really bad perk. And finally, we have Unforeseen, which is going to go in the A tier. This is the Unknown's best perk. What this does is it's like Trail of Torment, basically. But instead of making you completely undetectable, it makes you undetectable, but puts your terror radius on a generator that you kick. And it stays for 30 seconds. So it can definitely be disorienting for survivors, you know, not only because you're undetectable, but because they think you're like, you know, right next to the gen that they want to get on or something, you know, until they realize it at least. But even then, the effect is good. The value is consistent. It's a solid perk. All right, we're in the home stretch here. Next we have Unnerving Presence. This is going to go in the C tier. So Unnerving Presence is all right on Doctor, I guess. That is pretty much it, or in like skill check builds. It is a very niche perk. Otherwise, I would never recommend using this because it makes the skill check, the good skill check success zone smaller, but it doesn't shrink the great skill check success zone. So it actually makes it easier for survivors to hit great skill checks. So yeah, I mean, it has the niche benefit of being good in skill check builds or on Doctor, and that's about it. I would never use this perk otherwise. Next we have Unrelenting. This is going to go in the D tier. Unrelenting makes it so that your missed attack cooldown is like 30% shorter. How often are you missing M1s that you need a perk to make it less severe when you miss one? That's pretty crazy to me. That perk is, like, this perk is, I guess, good for like maybe 2 games, your first 2 killer games ever, and then you'll never touch it again. And even then, I wouldn't recommend using it because you might get too reliant on it. So yeah, just fuck this perk. This perk is awful. Weak effect, inconsistent value. If you don't suck. All right, next we have Wandering Eye. This is going to go in the B tier. What this does, it's kind of underrated as well, because once again, I haven't seen a single one of the Krazu's perks since her release week, you guys. Like, and outside of the Adept. I don't think I have seen a single person use Wandering Eye, Ravenous, or Hex Overture of Doom. And they're all like B tier perks. They're not horrible. So anyway, Wandering Eye reveals the auras of survivors nearby when you're chasing an injured, when you're chasing a survivor, it shows the auras of injured survivors nearby. So it's almost like, okay, here you're chasing this person, maybe you should chase this one instead if they're a little bit more out of position. Because, again, those survivors are injured. So it's pretty solid on like Nurse, Blight, even like Ghoul, and even killers like stealth killers like Ghostface or Myers or Sadako. Like, this perk is not bad at all. I don't know why nobody uses it. But, you know, as far as information perks go, it is mediocre. So that's why it's in the B tier. It's not great, but it's not bad. All right, next we have Weave Attunement. This perk is going to go in the D tier. Basically what this does is it reveals the auras of survivors who are nearby dropped items. Indefinitely. But again, we are judging these perks on their own, so the only time this perk is even usable is with Franklin's, for starters. Or like one of the Franklin's-esque add-ons, like Bubba's Franklin's add-on, or Twins Victor Franklin's add-on. Otherwise, this is useless. And, you know, even then, if you do get survivors to drop their items, Weave Attunement will reveal the aura of the item to the survivors. So they can see where the item is that's revealing their aura, and they can pick it up and go put it in a corner. If they do this, they'll get oblivious for like 30 seconds, but it's just, it's a weak effect, and the value is extremely inconsistent, especially on its own. All right, next we have Whispers, and I already covered what that does and why it's a D tier perk, so we're just gonna drop it there. And finally, we have Zanshin Tactics, which is going to go in the B tier. I know what this does, but I will read it out. Zanshin Tactics. The auras of pallets and windows are revealed to you within 32 meters, and whenever a survivor drops a pallet, their aura is revealed to you for like 5 seconds. Yeah, 5 seconds. So yeah, I mean, not a bad perk. It's just not, you know, it's fine. It's mediocre. Yeah, it's pretty good on Artist. I see a lot of artists using that. Clown can also make good use out of this perk, but as far as information perks go, or like chase perks go, it's just kind of mediocre, and that's okay. It's not terrible. So, all right. Well, that is our killer perk tier list. Let me try to get the whole thing in the frame here so that you can screenshot it if you want. There we go. All right, that should be all the perks there. Go ahead and take a screenshot if you're interested. But otherwise, thank you guys so very much for joining tonight. Not tonight. I just did my stream outro in a YouTube video. You didn't hear that, guys. Okay. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, don't forget to drop a like, maybe even a comment, and definitely subscribe. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. This is the Bento's official 2026 9.5.0 killer tier list. Or killer perk tier list. Okay, bye!